Reptichip sets the standard for reptile substrates. Made from the highest quality coconut available anywhere in the world, Reptichip allows enthusiasts and keepers to provide their reptiles with the necessary humidity and thermoregulation required for your animals to thrive. You can support the podcast by heading to reptichip.com/snakeboy or visit the link in the description below. This episode is brought to you in part by Exoterra. If you're as passionate about reptiles and amphibians as I am, you know that quality matters. I use Exoterra products on all my reptile and amphibian enclosures, which is why I'm excited to be partnering with them. From naturalistic decor to innovative lighting and enclosures of all sizes, Exoterra has everything you need for your cold-blooded companions. Exoterra, make your reptiles feel at home. This episode is brought to you in part by Unlimited Exotic Pets. Every day is Veranda Day for Nick Lillis, and it shows. At Unlimited Exotic Pets, Nick produces high-quality monitor lizards with a deep commitment to ethical care practices and top-tier nutrition. These aren't just pets. They're responsibly bred, ethically raised animals. Whether you're looking for a new companion, starting a breeding project, or anything in between, Nick has you covered. Unlimited Exotic Pets, keeping and breeding quality without limitations. Love reptiles? Don't miss this. If you're passionate about reptiles, amphibians, and everything cold-blooded, Reptiles magazine is a must-have. Each issue is packed with expert care tips, stunning photography, and the latest news in the reptile world. Whether you're a seasoned herpetologist or just starting your reptile journey, this magazine has something for you. Subscribe today and stay informed on the best ways to care for your scaly friends. For only $14.99 a year, you can step outside your algorithm and get exposure to things that you wouldn't normally see or learn about. My family reads Reptiles magazine, and you should too. Visit subscribe.reptilesmagazine.com to get started. This is the Expert and the Idiot podcast. If you like the show and you'd like to support us, there's a link to our Patreon in the description below. Some benefits include getting access to new episodes up to a month in advance. There's also links to USARK and USARK Florida. If you're not already a member, please sign up. Enjoy the show. All right, well, welcome to episode 100 of the Expert and the Idiot. Today, I'm talking to Kara Norris, and so is it the blood cell or is it bloodpythons.com?
That's a great question. So Ryan, my husband, had the blood cell, and I had the website bloodpythons.com, and so when we fell in love, as people are prone to do, we just said, you know what, let's just make bloodpythons.com the website for the blood cell. And so they'll both get you to the same place.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So if you put in the bloodcell.com, it takes you to bloodpythons.com?
It does. It should.
Okay, cool.
If it doesn't, then I need to go change things, but
That's
it does.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, we're going to talk about short-tail pythons today because that's my jam. Yeah, that's your jam. That's what you specialize in. But also, I want to get to know you better. I want to get to know kind of how did you end up being obsessed with these short-tail pythons and where did it start?
Oh boy. Well, I was into boas first. Like boas were
really?
Oh yeah. Locality boas were totally my thing. But I kept a variety of species. And let me just even back up, like before that, I got my first snake when I was 10. It was a rough green snake that I caught on the porch of my parents' house in Texas. And then like 2 weeks later, my dad found another snake in our kitchen. And my parents were like, get that thing out of the house, get it out. No more snakes in the house. It has to go. And the school I went to had a biology lab where they had a lot of snakes. And so they were like, why don't you just take it to the school biology lab? And so I took it to the school biology lab, and there were boa constrictors in there and turtles and frogs and all kinds of really cool stuff. And
Wow.
and the boa seed was planted and was not revisited until after I left home, because my parents had a very strict no snakes in the house rule after that incident. And so yeah, I got my first red-tailed boas, and then started getting into the locality stuff. Picked up some Brazilian rainbows as well, and then ended up with a mentor who had been the collection curator at VPI.
Mm.
And so this is fast forward to October 2000. And he said, hey, I'm going down to VPI this weekend. You want to come with me? And I'm like, yes, let's. And Tracy, who, is amazing, showed me a T-positive albino blood python. She was like, I know you think your boas are really colorful, because I had some really nice Belknap Surinams at the time. And she was like, I know you think your boas are really colorful, but look at this. And she stuck this T-positive albino blood python in my face. And that was it. That was it.
Wow.
I was so overwhelmed. I had like tears pouring down my face. It was just this, like, the most beautiful snake I'd ever seen. I like red snakes. And so there it was. And from that moment on, I've just been obsessed with them.
Wow.
Yep.
So going back to your boas, were they wild caught or were they all captive bred?
Most of them were captive bred, fortunately. And this was, gosh, I remember, again, this is like 98, 99, 2000, around in there. And I just remember like eating ramen noodles for weeks to save up enough money to get some really, really nice locality red tails from like Tim Belknap and Lloyd Lemke and folks like that. And just like poring over the ads in the back of Vivarium magazine, just waiting for each issue to come out, and then, send a SASE. And this was, like when kingsnake.com was kind of in its fledgling stages, and the internet wasn't really a thing. And so, back in our AOL and Hotmail email addresses, reaching out to these breeders, and sometimes you'd get photos in the mail, or sometimes somebody could figure out how to attach a photo to an email, and you get to see what these snakes look like, and then hope that the ones that you got at Delta were as nice as the ones that you saw in the photos. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it was nuts. It was really nuts. And then had the opportunity to move to New Hampshire in 2002 and worked for Nerd for nearly 10 years. And that
Oh, wow.
that was right at the peak of like the ball python thing happening. And that was wild. That was utterly wild. And just so getting exposed to all of that at the time, and then getting to work with so many other species while also focusing on bloods and short tails, it was just really fortunate to have some opportunities there.
All right, you're not allowed to gloss over a decade of working at Nerd. You gotta,
Okay.
you gotta give some stories.
Well, yeah. I mean, what? Gosh.
Like venomous. I mean, did you work with the venomous? Were you?
Yeah. In fact, well, okay. So here's a fun story. When I first moved up there, Kevin and I had kind of our private stuff at home, and then there were all the animals at the shop, and so I had some different snakes that I brought with me when I moved to New Hampshire. And one of them was this mottled rock rattlesnake that I caught at Fort Lancaster in Texas. And like, I just loved this snake so much. And we had an employee at the time at the shop that was stealing. And this was back when, albino ball pythons cost, I don't know, $3,000 or $3,500. And he had stolen a high contrast albino ball python. And we found out about it and actually worked with the Plastow Police Department to do kind of this setup to have him sell it to an undercover cop, and he did, and he got arrested.
Whoa.
And so to retaliate, he went and called Fish and Game on us and was like, "Hey, they have all these venomous snakes at the shop, and all this stuff at their house." And I just remember, they came to the shop, and they came to the house, and they were like, we need to take anything that's venomous. And I'm standing there in my snake room at home in New Hampshire with the head of law enforcement for the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department, or Department of Natural Resources. And Jeff Gray was his name, Colonel Gray. And he's looking, I'm bagging up this mottled rock rattlesnake and my Madagascarus colubrinus, which were rear-fanged colubrids, but they still had to go because they were rear-fanged, and a few other odds and ends that I had. And he looks over and he sees my big black-headed python. I had 2 black-headed pythons at the time, and the big male was out cruising around, and he was like, "I know this is really bad timing, but I've never seen one of these in person. Could I hold that?" And I'm just like, "Are you, are you kidding me?" And at the same time, it's like, okay, this guy loves snakes. And so, yeah, got the snake out, got a picture for him to show his family and all of that. And what was really cool is that experience turned into them giving us all our snakes back and giving us permits to have them, and then becoming a resource for the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department. And so we helped do all of their training with their officers. Like if they had to deal with venomous snakes or crocodilians or anything that had to be confiscated, we taught them how to do that. And then it just turned into a really great relationship where we're able to do timber rattlesnake reintroductions, like Head Start timber rattlesnakes, and then reintroduce them. And I'm pretty sure to this day, Kevin is still doing stuff like that. He put in some insane efforts to get timber rattlesnakes reestablished in New Hampshire and different parts of New England. And yeah, it was really awesome to see that kind of come full circle and turn into a positive.
Wow.
I mean, every world's first that hatched between 2002 and 2011, any of those that hatched at NERD hatched in our living room. We had the incubator in our living room. And our apartment was right there on site, built into the shop. Other fun stories. We did a girls' weekend where a bunch of my snake keeping friends came up, and we were going through one night and looking at big retics, and I had opened up an enclosure, and there were 2 snakes in the enclosure, and we were focused on one. And this was the big tiger calico retic that Kevin had at the time. And she grabbed my hand, and my entire hand was in her mouth. And this is like a 17-foot snake. And I'm just like, well, crap. All right. So we're pulling it out of the enclosure and sitting down, and my friend Robin goes over to the house, and she's like, "Hey, we need some help. Kara has a snake on her hand." And he's like, "How big is it?" And she's like, "Pretty damn big. It's big enough that I need your help," kind of thing. And so that was just yeah, it's just fun stuff. So getting gnawed on by a big retic was super fun. And of course, getting to work with Steve Irwin, that was huge. We provided all the animals for his East Coast appearances before he died. And so that was
really,
yeah, that was, I mean, yeah. It was amazing. What you saw was what you got with Steve. None of that was put on for TV. That was just who he was. I remember walking in, this would have been 2005, I want to say. It's been a hot minute. I've slept since then. And holding a big Sister Isles rock iguana that we had at the time named Boulder. And Steve walks in and he just holds his hands out, "Give me the baby," kind of thing. And it's he's just petting this iguana, and he's just oohing and awing all over it. And it was just the most genuine, authentic kind of thing. And he was just, just geeking out over this big friendly lizard. And yeah, I mean, just moments like that never leave you, and
wow.
Yeah, just
what an experience.
What an experience. I mean, yeah, just crazy stuff, walking into the Daytona Expo and people asking for my autograph. I'm like, "You don't want my autograph? Kevin's over there." I pack up the snakes. It was so surreal. It was so wild. And then just all the drama of, these different big breeders that were fighting over a customer that would spend 40 grand on a ball python, or, getting screwed over on shipments coming out of Indonesia. Supposedly you're getting this many animals and you spend however much money, and then you find out 2 of them go to somebody else. And there was just so much crazy stuff like that. And Sean is always telling me I should write a book. Maybe one of these days I will. So
yeah, geez,
yeah,
Louise. I mean, we could, the whole the Crutchfield documentary is, I kind of reminded myself of that yesterday, and I was like, gosh, I haven't heard anything on that. And it's scary because you don't know how bad it's going to be,
right,
and you hear stories like that, and there's a lot of people that say negative things about Kevin and Nerd and everything. And but the conservation that he did, that you just mentioned with the rattlers, and I had no idea that you guys were providing the animals for Steve Irwin to work with, and that's absolutely incredible. I mean, how many times did you meet him? Was it just that time?
We did 4 different shows, and then after I left, I know Kevin did a few more. So it was pretty special. I remember being backstage okay, really fun story from that. Conan O'Brien, and he had Alison Krauss on, who's a singer I love. I love bluegrass music, and her son is standing there with me and holding a blue-eyed leucistic ball python. And she comes up and she's just like, "That's not going to bite him, is it?" And I'm like, no, I promise, totally safe. It'll be fine. And I'm a really big fan of yours. And it was just this very kind of fun moment. So that was, it was neat. And that was the episode. I'm pretty sure I have a link or a video. I'll see if I can find it and send it to you. And that was where they ultrasounded a gravid anaconda on the show with Steve. And you could see all the little cinnamon rolls. That's what we used to call them, baby boas and baby anacondas look like cinnamon rolls during gestation because they're all coiled up. And yeah, it was a really cool thing. So I'll find that episode. If not, I know my mom recorded it on a VHS tape a million years ago and had it converted to DVD. So I know I have it somewhere that I can share with you. It was really, and then, Kevin dumps out this big pile of all these different ball python morphs that were the one and only of that kind at the time. And it was bonkers.
What the heck? So you were so you were backstage at 30 Rock. Was this when Conan was out on NBC?
Yeah. Yeah. It was nuts. It was, let me tell you, driving through New York City with a 7-foot alligator in your van. That's an experience. That was nuts. We had Wally, who was Kevin's big alligator. We had Poseidon at the time, who was a big water monitor, Asian water monitor. And then all the ball pythons, the anacondas, the rock iguanas. It was wild.
What in the hell, Kara? I didn't expect any of this.
Right? I know. It was, like I said, working at Nerd was really an experience. I will also say Kevin is probably the most misunderstood person in herpetoculture. Love him or hate him. I can definitely say he is 100% all about his animals. I don't always agree with how he gets there or some of the decisions that he makes as a result. But there is nobody who loves animals more than him that I've ever met in 30 years of working with reptiles. Nobody loves animals more than him. And nobody has their interest in mind like he does. And again, he may take a different way to get there. There have definitely been a lot of things that he and I have disagreed on in the past, of wanting different things out of life, which is perfectly fine. He and I are still good friends. And I, wish nothing but for his success. But a lot of people have a very, very messed up idea of who he is, and what you see is not always what you get when you read other people's opinions. So that I can say.
Do you think that's from the YouTube channel and kind of the sensational videos?
100%.
And things like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, some of it, but also, I think when you have someone like Kevin, who is 100% an introvert and who is then thrust into the public eye because of all of his work with animals, some of that, there's just going to be collateral damage, I think, when you have someone who is not a people person at all, who is forced to interact with people. I would just remember we would go to Daytona or Tinley or some of the big shows, and he would just be so tapped out at the end of it because people drain him. Animals pump him up and people drain him. And that's going to have, an impact on those interactions. So,
damn.
Yep.
Yeah. I feel that in my bones.
Right.
I went to Daytona, and Rob Christian was there, and he had one of those thermal imaging, tent guns with the screen on it. And he held it up, and he's like, "Yeah, put your hand up." And I put my hand up, and it was the same color as the background. It was complete. And he's like, "Are you alive?" And I'm like, it's social anxiety, dude.
It's legit.
Rob
is amazing too. He was, man, you want to talk about someone I miss seeing up in the New England days. He and we had just kind of this little band of friends that would come and hang out up at the shop. And we loved to make sparkler bombs You get a bunch of like wooden sparklers and you wrap them up in electrical tape, basically like a pressure bomb, and we'd blow up pumpkins with them. And it was so much fun. It was so much fun. So there you go, Rob. Great
Wow.
pumpkin rides again.
So how long of it, like, did you guys have like a big van that you would just load up with all the animals and then go?
Big Sprinter van.
Wow. And how long was that drive to get to New York City?
I'm trying to think. I mean, it had to be like 4 hours at least from New Hampshire to New York. Again, it's been a hot minute, but it was a long ass drive.
Yeah, especially with the traffic and everything.
With the traffic, and I mean, traffic and just craziness and all of it. It was pretty nuts. But I mean, we would drive out to Tinley, and that was like 18 hours from New Hampshire. That was a long drive. You get to about Ohio and you're really bleary and you're ready for that to be over.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun back in those days.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Texas. I grew up in North Texas, which was awesome because I got to do a lot of snake hunting in West Texas and thereabouts. And so it was just, my grandfather really instilled kind of a love of animals. He and my grandmother had a farm in Oklahoma. And I just remember walking red dirt roads with my grandfather and my papa, as I called him, and picking up box turtles and toads and tarantulas and just all kinds of stuff. And he was a woodworker, and so he loved to build me all these little critter keepers. And I was just always putting bugs and stuff in them, and was forced to empty my pockets before I could come in the house. And yeah, so.
Wow.
So just always loved animals, and showed horses for a lot of years when I was young, and dogs, and and that's how I got fascinated by pedigrees and bloodlines. And then I was like, I wonder if we can apply this to snakes, and turns out you can.
Being a nerd, when did you start getting into the short tails and like kind of using that as like a North Star?
Yeah, well, so I was into short tails. I had just gotten into them a couple of years before I moved up to New Hampshire, and so I already had quite a few. And then after moving up there, we would get like 100 lots of captive hatch babies or wild caught adults, and I would just start picking through those, and then, all right, I'm going to raise these up and see how they look. And, had the opportunity to get my hands on some really nice different adults. And, of course, all the different morphs were starting to pop up at that time. Tracy had just bred the golden eyes. She had just produced ivories. And that was back like 2003-ish. And then, different things were starting to become more and more popular. And I was just still really obsessed with red snakes. Like I just wanted to make something so red that you couldn't look directly at it because your face would melt off. And that's still my goal. I'm getting closer, but, it was just starting to say, all right, because, and let me back up. Like back then it was always this, it was a crapshoot of what you were going to get. And I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be a crapshoot of what you're going to get, because you would raise the snake up for 3 years or 4 years, and sometimes they would turn red and sometimes they wouldn't. So it was just like, all right, well, if we start breeding the reddest ones together, at some point you've got to hit where everything comes out red. And, here 25 years later, we're there. It's all it takes is 25 years and getting bit a whole lot.
So do you breed for the coloration that you're looking for first, and then is secondary temperament, or does the temperament kind of smooth out on its own after generations?
It's funny because I do breed for temperament. I select for that, and never was that more apparent than when Sean and I were at Nick's place. We went out there to help really photograph all of these animals so Kendra could move them, and we're just getting like lit up by these snakes. And I just remember walking into Kendra's kitchen and I was like, your husband did not breed for temperament. And, and it was this really heavy emotional time, but just being able to laugh about that. But there are times that I will deprioritize temperament if a snake has a color that I'm like, all right, I got to lock this in. But then in a future generation, I will outcross to something with a really calm, placid temperament. And you can still win them over. they will calm down for the most part, but there are some that never do. And they're snakes. These aren't puppies. They're going to bite you because that's what they do. And you just have to decide like how much juice is worth the squeeze or how much squeeze is worth the juice kind of thing.
Yeah.
Is the color really there, and is it reproducible, and is the temperament something that you can live with? And then if it's not, then how do you mitigate that? And that is you outcross to something that's not so spicy.
When you're doing that, are you thinking about pet keepers, or are you thinking about people that are going to continue the line and continue refining from what you've been working with?
I believe that I have an obligation for every snake that I hatch to give it the best opportunity to end up in a great home. And that may be with a pet keeper, and that may be with another breeder, that may be at a zoo, that may be, it really just kind of depends. And so I think that we have to take temperament into consideration. I think that's why it's so necessary to be really transparent about temperament. It's transparent to be about, the way we're keeping these animals, like what size enclosure are they in? What are we kind of acclimating them towards? And then if we're not ready to do that, I mean, I'll be very blunt about this. Like my next addition is going to be Cribos and Indigo snakes so that I can feed blood pythons to them. I think that we have a responsibility to hard cull. And I think a great way to do that is to raise feeder snakes for other snakes. So,
wow, that's controversial.
I mean, every other species does. I mean, with birds, birds get processed out. Dogs and cats get spayed and neutered. We don't have spay and neuter available for reptiles. And so if I hatch something that just, like I hatched a snake this year, one of my raspberry outcrosses, that snake is going to get fed to something at some point because he's just temperament wise is insane, is utterly unreasonable. And sometimes that'll happen with a complete outcross, right? Like you'll hit something you do not expect to hit. And this snake will turn himself inside out to bite, to bite. Like he is just, there's a certain threshold of temperament that you see, and you can gauge milestones and like when a snake should kind of be calming down and adjusting to interaction. And this one just will levitate to get to you, to bite you. And I'm just like, you know what, dude? No, you are Cribo food.
Wow.
So yeah. And I think it's a perfectly viable way to keep numbers reasonable. I mean, why are we dumping normal male ball pythons into the hobby?
Yeah.
When those could be feeders for king cobras, for Cribos, for indigo snakes, for monitors, for anything like that. There's a much bigger chance of a normal male whatever ending up in really crappy conditions. And I think that if we are going to bring more animals into this world, we need to have hard discussions about what does it look like to hard cull animals from a breeding program, and how do we do so humanely and safely and have a viable outlet for them.
Yeah, I've actually had this conversation before on a couple different occasions, specifically about ball pythons, because I mean, you look at, morph market right now, and I think it's around like 35,000 ball pythons on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you look there, and if you sort it lowest to highest, you're going to be scrolling through $20 and $30 snakes. Now, if somebody is looking for a $20 or $30 snake, what level of care are they willing to give that animal?
Right.
Are they going to bend over backwards to make sure that animal has 20 to 30 fantastic years of life? Or is it going to be a throwaway pet in 5 or 6 years and make it somebody else's problem?
Exactly.
And for, and it's weird. It's really hard to, like, when you said that, it like gives you like this feeling in your stomach, like, oh my God, that's such a wild thing to say. But we euthanize rats constantly and chicks and constantly to be able to feed our animals in this hobby. My dog eats buffalo food, there's bison in there, so it's like we're constantly, I'm sure, cattle are very intelligent animals.
They're wonderful creatures, creatures,
but
they taste really good.
Yeah, we eat them constantly.
Got one in my freezer right now. I mean, we get half a beef every year. So it's
it's just, for some reason, it's like a hard conversation to have, but I think that it needs to be had. I think that if we're going to be breeding for specific traits and morphs and things like that, then you also have to be able to come to terms with the fact that there's not room for all of those, that byproduct in the hobby, which is,
100%.
it's rough. It's
well,
rough.
Is it? Because again, we're perfectly acclimated to doing that with every other species. I mean, I process my own chickens. I have chickens that have names that are wonderful pets, and I have chickens that end up in my freezer after I, bleed them out and pluck them and eviscerate them and package them up, and then they turn into a lovely stew or soup, but I know exactly how that animal was treated its entire life. I know exactly the quality of care that chicken has had, and it's not some mass-produced battery bird. It came to me as a chick. It free-ranged on my land. It ate in my pastures. It got treats from my garden, and then I turned around and turned it into a healthy meal for myself and my family. More people need to do that, because then you have that connection with that animal. You have that connection with that food. You don't lose sight of the fact that this is not just something packaged that you get at the grocery store. And I think, similarly with reptiles, it's really easy for people to want to put two snakes together because they are the same species, sometimes not the same species, and of a mature breeding age. And they do not have the foresight to think, what does the end game look like for every single life that I am bringing into this world? And they just don't. They put it up for sale and never think about it again. And we have to do better than that. And that's why I think making feeders is perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, it is. If we're going to be breeding them like this, and there is going to be an excessive, number of animals that are, like you said, normals and things like that, then there should be a strategy in place for where those animals should go to become feeders, for animals that would eat them. I don't disagree with you on that. And I think that if it started happening, if Rodent Pro had a ball python feeder section, people would get used to that really quick, and it would kind of normalize it where, okay, yeah, it's, you can get hamsters, you can get rats and mice and chicks and quail and all that, and ball pythons.
Absolutely. Or blood pythons or king snakes or what, it doesn't have to be limited to any one species, but it's a viable solution. Again, as long as it's handled humanely. Don't go throwing snakes in the freezer. But these are the responsible conversations that we need to have as hobbyists, and not just look the other way and make it somebody else's problem, because it's ultimately all of our problem.
Damn, I had a question and I lost it.
Sorry.
It was, vetting customers. Like, how do you, because I know, so like if somebody's listening to this and they go, gosh, and I want to get into the, how I really feel like short-tail pythons, blood pythons are like the most misunderstood animal in this hobby.
Totally.
Like, it is crazy. Like, I'll be listening to a podcast or a video or something, and randomly somebody will say, yeah, I mean, it's, not like I was getting a blood python where, it's going to rip my face off and this and that. And it's like, maybe if you were getting like an F1 or something from somebody that doesn't breed for temperament, but it doesn't have to be that way. Right. It does not have to be that way. So if somebody's coming to you, if they're listening to this and they think, man, I really want to get a pet blood python, and and we'll get into the your recommendations on care and all that, but you have to fill out an actual what do you
application?
Call your form?
My prospective owner application. And this is a practice that is really common with purebred dogs. I showed Great Danes for 12 years, and that was a kind of a concept that I took from my dog breeder friends, because there's a lot of gatekeeping in purebred dogs, as there should be. Not in a negative way. Like, I think we have to be responsible. Again, don't try to lock people out and that sort of thing. But I don't want my snakes going to just anybody. I've put 25 years into refining and perfecting the customers that I've had in the past that were not willing to fill out an application before I went to this process, and before I I think kind of said, all right, something needs to be better here. I got tired of dealing with people that didn't want to give their snakes the best care. They would reach out and have questions. And I have over 30,000 words on blood python husbandry on my website. And I would send people links. They're like, I don't want to read all that. Just tell me how to do it. I'm like, you know what? If you can't put in a little bit of effort for this snake, I don't think I want you as a customer. And so I end up turning people away every season. But I want better keepers for my snakes, and having an application where you can, tell me about yourself, tell me about your snakes. What is your purpose? Like, do you actually have an intention for these animals? Have you put any thought into this? What's your long-term goal? What's your plan? How do you, go through kind of a critical thought exercise? What do you do if a snake stops feeding? What's your current experience? What questions do you have? All that kind of thing. I want to know who this person is that I'm sending a snake to, because I want the snake to have a great experience. I want that person to have a great experience. And I want to have enough of a relationship with them where if something is not right or they have a concern, that they're comfortable reaching out to me and saying, hey, I need help troubleshooting this. So.
And has that weeded out poor keepers?
Oh gosh. Yeah. Oh gosh. I mean, I've still run into some that have been problem kids because, it's the internet. People can say anything. But if I get a weird application, or if I get one that just kind of gets my spidey senses tingling, I'll ask for a phone call. And that usually gives me a pretty good indication of who they are and what they're about. How well does someone think on their feet? When you hit them with husbandry questions, or just like kind of random life stuff. It's a really good way to get a sense of someone and what they're willing to do for an animal.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever had somebody where they put in an application and you didn't think they were there, and then you talk to them and you're like, you know what, actually this person is, they do have it. It's, maybe they were just bad on paper.
Yeah, absolutely. I have people that don't test well. As I like to say, maybe they don't come across, there are some folks that have a hard time with the written word. They might not be as articulate, but you get them on the phone and they're incredibly passionate about their animals, or they send you pictures and their setups are just immaculate. And yeah, absolutely. And that's why it helps to make that connection. It helps to not just have it be a form that you stamp and say next. It's all right, I'm going to take the time to actually connect with this person and understand who they are and what they're about. Because that's what we need to do. So
yeah, I think that it's kind of funny. It's like there's so many things in life that people talk about them in such a way that it kind of steers you away from interacting with whatever it is. And blood pythons were one of those things where I was like, God, I really want one, but everybody's telling me I have to keep it in a tub. Right. And I personally want to be able to look at my animals.
Yeah.
That's how I like to keep, and I remember reaching out to you and you were like, no, they can. You just, in time, it's like with time and patience and reading the animal and seeing if they're confident and all that, it's, and then like, once I got my blood pythons, I'm like, man, these are, and I've had them in the past and they were probably, one generation removed from wild caught, and they were super snappy. And, it was a whole different thing than what I have now, where my animals are so laid back, that it's fantastic. And I told you, like my one girl, I tested my entire quarantine rack and I had to get a saliva sample, and blood pythons are not about that life.
not even in a little bit. Like the minute you grab a blood python behind the head to restrain it, that animal has issues with you, and you will spend a lot of time regaining that trust. And I'll tell you the quickest way to build trust with a blood python. You go in, you open the enclosure for 10 seconds and you just pet the snake down the back, and you shut the enclosure and you walk away. You do that 2 or 3 times a day, every day. And they're just like, okay, all right. That's cool. You wear them down.
Yeah.
Wear them down with kindness.
Yeah. And that I recorded my whole episode with Dave Levinson with my girl. And she was like, at first she was kind of huffy, where she'll blow air.
Yep.
And but once she opens up and she gets curious, then I can't keep her. Then I can't keep her from moving.
Right.
Then she's curious and she wants to move around and all that. Why do you think that they have why do you think people view them so negatively as pet snakes?
Oh my
Why do you
gosh.
think that
Well,
is?
I mean, wild caught blood pythons are a menace to society. Because I mean, here's a snake that'll, blast you with teeth and blast you with urates at the same time. And they, it's just such a different body type. They're these short, stocky, girthy snakes. And they don't move like a ball python. They don't move like a retic. They don't move like anything. They move like a gaboon viper is probably the closest thing. And people don't know how to read that. I think that they're just a tough snake they're reactive. They pick up on tension very, very easily. And I think just the way they move and the way they act tends to set off a less confident keeper. And so then and it's really easy to perpetuate. We're still dealing with people are afraid of wild caught bloods. And that's a reputation from 20, 30, 40 years ago now. Because there's some really wonderful blood pythons in captivity with incredible temperaments, but people are afraid to give them a chance. And I mean, I have snakes that I would hand to somebody that has never even looked at a snake before and feel 100% confident that they would be okay. I also have snakes that I cannot do that. They would ruin someone's day real quick. And it's a matter of, you learn to work around that snake and can't ever lose sight of the fact it is still a snake. It's not a golden retriever. And we have to just have realistic expectations. And that's where, as we semi-domesticate these animals, they'll never be truly domesticated. But, you look at ball pythons, you look at corn snakes, you look at these really accessible species that people have an easy time with, that have adapted to that. And they carry those expectations over with them to blood pythons. And then they're just like, why isn't this snake acting like these other snakes? And it's like, because it's a different kind of snake. They're not going to act the same way. And we have to give them that leeway. We have to allow them to just be what they are and meet them where they are. So.
Yeah. They're so cool. They're such cool.
They're wicked
animals.
Cool. Yeah, they really are. I just love them.
At your time at Nerd and being with Kevin, did you learn how to build trust with animals during that?
My gosh. Oh my gosh. So much. Yeah. One of the first things Kevin taught me was how to deal with like upset snakes, and retics are always a great way. And you pick them up and you point their head away from you and you turn in circles. That's like his go-to trick. And because it keeps the snake slightly disoriented, they're not locked in on you. And then you just feel them start to relax in your hands, and it works really well.
Does that work with blood pythons?
It sure does.
Nice.
Sometimes you have a shorter fuse, but they'll eventually. But again, I like the go in and pet them real quick and then shut the enclosure, and you just like that for me, I have found works better. Keeping one on your desk or something as you're working, if you work from home. Obviously not everybody can do that, but just being around them in their presence and vice versa, that tends to work really well too, in just building that trust. Most snakes, I think, thrive on routine. Most animals thrive on routine. Animals like to be able to anticipate patterns and routines. And when they do, they know something's not a threat. And so they're able to relax into it a little bit more. And that's true of every species, I believe. And so, like all of my snakes get like their maintenance, they get handled when the lights are on. When lights are out, that's time to feed and time to be a snake. And I don't expect my snakes to behave themselves after dark. Like I would never just go into an enclosure and not expect to get railed with a feeding response or somebody just being squirrely, because lights are on, snake is out of the enclosure. I expect you to behave and at least be somewhat reasonable. And that's just the routine that we've set and the patterns that we've established. And so if you cater to that, if you accommodate that, you give the snake something to anticipate, and you're conditioning that behavior. So, and it works for every species. Again, that's not specific to bloods. It works incredibly well with bloods, but retics, white-lipped pythons, boas, anything like that. Establish routines. Let the snake anticipate something, and they will be much more likely to meet you where you are.
I recently started feeding my blood pythons in separate containers.
Oh, okay.
And the only reason I'm doing that is because they're growing so fast that their coils are so high now around their food item that it's like, I can't close the drawer. I can't close the tub.
Sure.
And I'm not quite ready to move them into an enclosure. I have empty enclosures sitting there, but I want them to, be more comfortable with me, more comfortable, one thing I've been doing is actually leaving them out and walking by them and seeing how they react to me, just walking around the room, doing waters and things like that. And it seems like they're getting more and more comfortable and more acclimated to that movement and less triggered by it, but I do that with my Argentine boa, and it has like almost guaranteed that she never expects food when I come into her cage too, which is like an added benefit. Yeah. And I'm like, that's like, I can, and this, you're probably going to say that you're crazy, but I can go in there at night and put my hand right up to her face.
Yeah, you're crazy.
I know. But she doesn't expect food.
That's awesome.
Ever.
That's
ever.
Awesome.
And I talked to Dr. Loafman about that, and he's like, yeah, if you don't want your snake to expect food when you go in their cage, don't feed them in their cage. Yep. And he has some false water cobras that he feeds in tubs, and they excitedly get into their tubs to be fed.
Yes. Snakes can be conditioned very easily. It's the coolest thing. Yeah.
It's so interesting watching that. Now, my female Timor python, on the other hand, I open that cage up, as soon as the bright white lights go out, and forget about it.
Yeah.
She'll light me up.
Spaz. Totally. But that's Timors.
Yep. Yeah.
They can be a little nutty.
There's something else.
They are. They are live wires. Yes. They're like retics with electricity.
Yeah. Yeah. And Florida legal retics.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So I want to talk about sexing blood pythons.
Fun. Yeah.
I feel like as time goes on, I feel like I'm hearing more and more stories of, I got this male and it was a female, or I got this female and it was a male, and it seems like there's a lot of that going on. Can you explain why that is?
Yeah, because females have big, we call them scent glands, hemipenal homologs. And they can just be very difficult to discern, especially, here's something. We have a lot of newer keepers coming into blood pythons. Blood pythons are easy to breed. Any idiot can breed them. I'm proof of that.
Okay.
So, but I mean, seriously, what is the first thing people do? They get snakes, they breed them. All right, I've hatched all these babies. I've never sexed a snake before in my life. How often does that happen? Every flippin' year. Yeah. And, I get it. Like, people are excited. They want to hatch stuff. Like, hatching stuff is wicked cool. It absolutely is. But you gotta walk before you can run. You have to learn how to sex snakes correctly. And now that herpetocultural or herpetological societies are not as prevalent as they used to be, there aren't a lot of resources to go and learn how to do this in person. Like, this is one of the cool things that, when Sean and I were down at Kendra's place, and Nick and Kendra's place back in July, I got to teach Sean how to sex blood pythons in person. Like, here's how you do it. Great. Repeat times 100. Sean knows how to sex blood pythons now, I guarantee you. But they are, females will pop these big scent glands, and sometimes males will be embarrassingly unwell endowed, shall we say. They can have like these tiny little hemipenes, and it can be very difficult to discern if you just have not seen 1,000 of them or however many. And so if you're sitting there with your first clutch of blood pythons, and trying to sex them, and you have no idea what you're really looking at, females can look like males. Some males can get mistaken for females. And if you don't have a good technique, it can be really tough to do. So, yeah.
So the males, you could say the males have it's hemipenal homologs, right? So
The
the
females do.
male,
Yeah. The females have, like, the homolog is the kind of the counterpart or the opposite to the actual hemipene. They
okay.
get called scent glands a lot just because blood pythons will musk. But it's, and they're big. And with females, it's usually, they're very cylindrical. They're light pink. They're not that dark, angry, red that you see on like a male's hemipenes. And they tend to come out more like goalposts as to where hemipenes will V out. And so, but again, so much of that is about your technique. And depending on how much pressure you're putting on the cloaca, on the vent, you could cause them to V out. You could cause them to not come out. Like there are so many ways to incorrectly sex a snake that if you're taking a picture of it and sending it to someone else to say, is this a male or female? I have no idea how much pressure you're putting on that. If you're torquing on the snake real hard, you could completely have it look different than what it is in person. And that's why you have to have just a very gentle technique, that's not putting too much pressure. It's not putting too little pressure. And you have to get a full aversion. And it's just hard to do if you haven't done it again 1,000 times. And that's why I think everybody needs, like, the best way to learn to pop a snake is on ball pythons, I think, just because they're easy. You're not going to sit there and light you up the same way baby bloods will. But this is something you have to get hands-on experience with as a keeper. If you intend to breed any kind of snake, get hands-on experience, find a mentor that will help you learn to sex snakes and go over it. And then have someone teach you a proper probing technique too, because it's easy to improperly probe. You can, perforate a hemipene. You can use too big a probe, too small a probe, and then you're kind of right back in the same boat. So, and that hands-on experience is something we're losing with the internet, and people not getting that mentorship the same way they used to 20 years ago.
Yeah, and it really stinks too. It's hard to find people that'll let you into their collection locally too.
Yeah,
it's difficult.
Good luck getting past the guard geese here. Like,
Yeah.
We maintain a closed collection. I don't want people coming to my house, because people, and I like, for the most part, I like people. But I don't want the world coming to my house. This is my sanctuary, that sort of thing. So yeah, it is hard. And that's where, if you establish a relationship with someone and you go to a show, like, that's a great place to learn if they're willing to let you get hands-on at a show. Otherwise, this is where I think as breeders, we have to be more willing to reach out, make those connections, and help others learn. Like, that's also why I do the application process. Like, if you're really into it and you really want to learn, yeah, we'll do a boot camp, or we'll find a way to teach you up. So.
Well, I know what I'm doing at my next Daytona.
Right.
I'm going to be asking if I can pop some peens.
There you go. Ooh, party hard. But seriously though, it is something you have to learn. Best way with blood pythons is you sex them right out of the egg. And it's for any snake really. Because within a couple of weeks, they've gained enough muscle control that those aversions can be really hard to get. So any species, if you can pop them right out of the egg, that's when you're most likely going to be the most accurate.
And then do you verify a couple days later, or obviously not you, because you're that damn good, right? You just pop them and you're like, done.
Well,
female.
Or what I'll do, like, Ryan is wonderful for that, because Ryan's not really into the snakes as much anymore. But he's great for creative input. And then, like, there is nobody better at sexing snakes. Like, I think he's better than I am even. And so that is something we do together every year, is go through and sex the snakes. And then we'll have, males and females are really obvious. And then we'll get like those tweeners, and we'll come back a few days later and pop them again. Or we'll raise them up for a year and then probe them, or even 6 months and probe them and, verify.
Now, would a tweener be like a male with a little hemipene, or a female with large hemipenal homologs?
Usually it's females with large hemipenal homologs, just because we tend to be really cautious. I will err on the side. I will say, if someone does get a missed sex snake from me, they're getting a female they didn't anticipate, which is usually a plus. Because I would much rather be wrong on a female than wrong on a male.
Yeah.
So... But typically
really derail somebody's plans, right?
Oh my gosh. I've had it happen multiple times. Like, I have I have a snake sitting out in my snake room right now that came from another keeper several years ago as a female. And I'm like, huh, you're not acting like a girl. And so I ended up probing it, and it was a male, and yeah, a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful albino, T-positive albino blood python with lily mixed in. But it's a male that is, great temperament. Anyone need a beautiful albino blood with great temperament? Because he's sitting in my snake room and he can go live with someone else because I have more males than I know what to do with. But it happens. And that's why also you got to verify, like everyone has it in their terms, verify the sex. So many people don't. And then 3 years down the road, they call you and they say, hey, this is not what I thought it was. Where was this conversation 3 years ago? So.
Yeah. So how is he behaving like a male? What are you observing?
Oh, you just like looking for girls, looking for females, cruising a little bit, looking, just, hey, it's that time of year. Pheromones are floating around in the room. I'm pushing at the edge of my cage and I'm looking for love, sort of thing.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you like morphs or line bred animals more? What's your, like, if you could only have like one blood python?
Line bred. Give me a line bred raspberry from my line that's been in development for nearly 20 years now. I will always be a line bred. Although I do have the spectacular glowworm now, and that's a T-positive Sunder zigzag batik that Nick produced. And I call him the spectacular glowworm. His nickname is Pretty Hate Machine because because Nick did not breed for temperament. Love you, Nick. But that snake blows my mind. I can't believe a blood python looks like that. And he's orange with a Burmese python pattern, and he's but just bizarre. And so, yeah, I have Nick. I have morphs now. Thanks to Nick. He kept nudging me to get into them, and I'm sending you this because you need to breed it to a raspberry, and I want to see what it looks like. And so I would, and I did, and now there are more morphs here now. Because of him than I've ever worked with before in 25 years of keeping bloods. So,
wow.
Yeah.
How did that, can you talk to me about the raspberry line and how did that start and what were you looking for and where is it now and where would you like to see it go?
So I, in 2006, acquired a wild caught blood python female that was like ketchup red and mustard yellow. And I'll have to send you pictures of her, and that way, if you want to like pop one in or something, you can show people. But this snake had about a 10-second fuse, and she would levitate to get you. She was just unhinged, completely unhinged. And to this day, she's still probably the reddest blood python I've ever seen in my life. And it took 2 years to get her to calm down, to reproduce. And so I bred her to just a really, really pretty red male that had a nice temperament, and produced that first clutch in 2008 and kept most of them. Sold a few early on, but raised them up and then evaluated and raised them up and evaluated, and then would, sell onesie twosies here and there until I had like the 6 best. And then I line bred some of those and repeated the process over again and raised them up, sold onesie twosies, line bred them again, and have just been sitting on them. And they are the reddest snakes I've ever produced. They consistently produce red snakes. I don't sell them anymore. In fact, Nick was the last person to get one, and the snake that he got is back with me. Thank you, Kendra. They're the reason I keep blood pythons. They're beautiful. They are consistently red. They produce consistently red. And I bred them into Goldeneye, which is, they've been crossed into PE Stripe and now Goldeneye. And, Nick sent me my Goldeneye male just because he wanted to see that pairing, and they hatched 6 weeks after he passed. So that was, it's so surreal. It's so, yeah, like I can't believe that he didn't get to see them. But they're ridiculous. They have like these crazy, crazy patterns, and they're already red as babies. And Sean has one of the goldeneye raspberry females that just seemed like it made sense for him to have one. And yeah, so now I think the goal is to eventually breed them. You know, I'd like to see them eventually get into pied. My immediate plans are to put them into T positive and then sunder. And I have some animals here to help make that happen. And we'll just see. But if I never sell another one, I'm also cool with that. So, and you know, it's also why I don't make a bunch of them, because they're red, and they're why I love these snakes. And yeah, hatching them is amazing. So,
I want to get into a couple of the other lines.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about the PE stripe?
Yeah, absolutely. So PE stripe, you know, that came from Pro Exotics, which was Chad Brown and Robin Markland. And Ryan, my husband, had some of their original group of animals that are just these glorious tri-stripe, you know, head to tail stripes. And we still have that line, amazingly, which, you know, back in 2020, we had a big heating malfunction in our collection and lost a bunch of animals and almost quit. That was almost the end of it. And I almost quit and was too dumb to quit, apparently, because I'm still breeding blood pythons. But anyway, so we still have some of the original line PE stripe, and I've now crossed those into raspberry. I've now crossed those into our manic panic line, which are just some insanely red snakes that, again, came from a male that Ryan imported through Al Baldogo many years ago. And just have developed those back. But the PE stripes are awesome. They mix well with everything, and they just throw some crazy stuff. So excited to mix those into a few other lines as we move forward.
Yeah, I think the girl I got from you is Martyr and PE stripe outcross.
Yes.
Or was it?
Well,
yeah.
Okay. So yours is so the snake that sired yours is from Matt Minatola's PE stripes, because she was,
Love that guy.
Oh my gosh, it's Matt. Man, you talk about the Borneo god. Like and like the nicest guy. Like Matt is just so down to earth and so cool, and has an incredible eye for just making funky stuff. And so he bred one of his PE stripe animals to a really red blood that he calls, I think, the Hamburg Steel, because he picked it up at Hamburg for like, I don't know, like $50 or something. It's one of those legends in the blood python world. And that pairing produced a snake that I call Arson. And Arson is just this black cherry, stripy, awesome thing. And so I bred him to Jewel, who is one of my martyr females. And that's who your girl came from. And yeah, just really, really pretty stuff there. Just classic saturated reds. So
Hamburg Steel. That's
Hamburg
hilarious.
Steel.
If he wasn't such a damn good father, he'd be on the podcast a lot more.
Oh my gosh.
He's always spending time with his kids and working.
I mean, what a jerk, right? I know. He sets a very high bar. Matt is good people. And, you know, I think about people who've been keeping blood pythons for decades now. And Matt is just one of those people that, you know, he found his lane and stayed in it, and has just been so successful doing what he does, and is just one of the most genuinely nice, down to earth people. And yeah, he's one of the people that makes this hobby so cool. And I think a lot of blood python keepers are like that. Like, we just have some really, really cool people in our community, and by and large have for a long time.
Yeah. He was one of my first guests. You know, one of the first people that were kind enough to take a gamble and come on here with an idiot.
You're far from an idiot, I think we can say. So, but yeah, he's good peeps.
He is. So tell me about the Manic Panic line.
Yeah. So TBC Manic Panic. And that's kind of I stick the TBC prefix on animals that we either imported out of the wild or produced here. And so if you see that TBC prefix on them, we hatched them or we imported them. And that's the only time you'll see that. So TBC Manic Panic was a snake that Ryan imported through Al Baldogo, who, Baldogo Retix. He lives here in Iowa, and was this insanely red snake, and like red head, had the crazy bars across the neck, and then like orange sides and this melty stripe. And we still have some F1s from him,
Wow.
with the attitude to go with it, and just makes these ridiculous red-headed animals. But there's also a dark-headed side of the pedigree that pops out, and they didn't have like really clean striping, and like these dusky orange and pink sides that are really beautiful, and they kind of color change, like they'll fire up and fire down. But I really, what I'm focused on is like the red-headed side of that pedigree, and just putting that into different stuff and enjoying it. So, yeah.
The raspberry line, that is also TBC, right? So
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So those are all your lines essentially,
Mm-hmm.
that were imported, and that they originated with you guys.
Exactly. And I mean, granted, raspberry started while I was still in New Hampshire. So that was kind of a before Ryan and I happened project, but it's just, it's one that I've developed and just kept going this whole time. So it got the TBC prefix too,
Nice.
Because it originated from wild caught stock.
What about the Martyr line? What can you tell me about the Martyr line?
I mean, Kevin Martyr, man, just what a legend in blood python circles. He, he and Ryan go back years and years and years, and he imported some beautiful animals too. I know that he mixed Banca into some of his lines early on. Like we had pink Bancas and did some swapping back and forth. And I know Kevin had imported some Bancas too. And he just makes really freaking red snakes. I think that's probably the best way to put it. And he has some that, don't have Banca in them. And that's where our Martyr stuff comes from, is from his side of the pedigree, that before he started mixing Banca animals in. And so they don't have the red heads. They have those classic black heads and black tails, and then just fire engine red in between. And I know that Kevin kind of took a turn where he started putting a lot more of like the pink banded Banca influence animals into it. And that's what's giving him like the crazy blocky necks and head patterns, and, the wild banding that they have. And he's done just some amazing, amazing work with that. And, they're outcrossed to a lot of stuff. I know there are just a lot of Martyr snakes out there because Kevin's been doing this a long time, and then people take them and they outcross them to other stuff, and whether or not they keep up with bloodline tracking as accurately may or may not be the case. So I think, as with anything, look for verifiable provenance on your snakes. See how far back you can trace them before just accepting that a Martyr is what a Martyr is, because people have just mixed a bunch of stuff into them. But if you see Martyr attached to something, it's usually going to be a pretty quality animal. Like I love my pure Martyr stuff. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I have like 6 of them. And just between stuff I've raised up and stuff that I've acquired that Kevin produced, and they're just good snakes. Yeah, really pretty.
So Banca is a
locality.
A locality that is being outcrossed into the Martyr line. Okay. Can you tell me about the Banca locality?
Yeah, they're these little islands off the coast of Indonesia, and they tend to be small. I think most insular animals tend to be smaller. There was a while there that they were getting imported, and everything was getting called Banca this, Banca that, and they didn't look like kind of some of the traditional Bancas that came in the late 90s and early 00s, and or early aughts, I should say. And those snakes were very distinct. There was a lot of striping. There was a lot of pink influence, a lot of banding that was really easy to line breed. And so my husband Ryan line bred those a lot. He had gotten a group of Banca animals in and acclimated them, and just made some really killer pink stuff with them. But just even the wild caught adults just had a different look to them. They were smaller, very, very red, and just a lot of pink and orange undertones. So
Mm.
I'll have to dig up some old pictures because I know I have some in our archive. But yeah, they had a look to them. And then, another 10, 15 years later, you see all these animals coming in labeled as bancas, and maybe they are, but they didn't look anything like the ones that were labeled as bancas back then. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
How big are your martyrs that don't have that banca influence?
Like 5.5 to 6 foot.
Okay.
So yeah, definitely. And I would say most of the animals in our collection are that size. We have some big girls that are up over 6.5 feet, like big bloods. But
Damn.
yeah, they're fun. And I'm only 5'4", so that's really fun sometimes. But yeah, most of them are probably in the 5.5 to 6 foot range, and which is pretty typical, I think, of what we see of animals of Sumatran origin these days, which is where most of what's in the hobby, gets exported out of Sumatra. And, these wild caught snakes, they come in through skinning stations there. And there's a lot of farming going on with blood pythons because there is such a demand for them. I know I'm tangenting here a little bit, but, there's hundreds of thousands of blood python skins are exported every year. And so gathering gravid wild caught females and letting them lay eggs and hatching those babies is kind of big business over there. So, yeah.
How do you feel about the skin trade?
It's gnarly. It's I think the way those animals are treated is abhorrent. I think skinning anything while it's still alive there's a warmer spot in hell for people who are willing to do that. At the same time, I look at a culture of poverty, where people are trying to feed their families and they're trying to live. And so it's like, how do we get them to see a value in these animals, but also treat them humanely if they're going to be harvested for their skins? And it's just a real conundrum.
Yeah, that makes you feel pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, no animals should be treated that way. And then at the same time, when you have a culture that you don't understand and you're not a part of, and you're looking at it kind of from a place of privilege that a lot of us are in, that our kids go to bed well fed every night, and it's hard to understand what it would be like to be in their shoes.
It's really easy to sit in our comfortable houses here in the US and pass judgment on lifestyles that we can't even wrap our brains around. And we need to be a hell of a lot more humble.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yep.
What are some other lines that we haven't covered that you can think of, or do you think we covered most of them?
Cherry bomb albinos. Those are a popular one. I know Dave and Tracy at VPI developed those, and they're just these outrageously red T-positive albinos. I have a line of T-positive albinos that I call the Crush line, just because kind of the founding male from that line, his name was Crush, and that's just more for so I know who and what these snakes are. But they have just a really cool, like, reduced dorsal pattern and heavy laterals, and they look like a tequila sunrise. They're orange and pink and red and really neat. Trying to think of other bloodlines. Red X is another T-positive line that Dave and Tracy developed. And again, just intensely red animals. Trying to think of other just bloodlines that aren't mutations.
I need to reach out to Tim Bailey and make sure that my martyr female that I got from him is pure martyr. The way that you described the martyr line, it very much lines up with my animal, with the really dark head and the dark tail. And she's the most laid back snake I've ever dealt with too, which I'm when because that's important to me. I like interacting with my animals.
Yeah. And you want your kids to have good experiences. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, I asked him, I'm like, is it, how is this animal? And he's like, oh, she's been fine out of the egg, and she has remained that way. Again, she held a little bit of a grudge after the saliva sample was taken. But
I mean, I would too.
But, yeah.
I probably wouldn't like you for a couple of days. So
yeah. I can't believe how strong they are too, even at their size.
Those huge transverse muscles down their back, like they can just twist and torque, and they're stupid strong.
Yeah, it was like they were like bucking me off, you know, and it
Mm-hmm.
was like, I was almost concerned they were going to hurt themselves.
Yes.
You know, it's like, look, I just want to get this done and we can move on, you
Yep.
know, but
When you have to do something
yeah.
like that, sit down and hold the body of the snake between your knees.
Mm,
That's how I force feed when I have to assist feed anything. Hold the body of the snake between your knees, and that way you've got both hands to do what you need to do.
mm.
So
How often, so how hard is it getting babies started? Like,
it's
is it usually pretty
it's usually
easy?
not. I really try to select for good feeders. I think we have a responsibility as breeders to select for good feeders, but sometimes I have a snake that I assist fed for a year before she finally kicked in, and I mean she's huge and never looked back. And if I do decide to include her in my breeding program, it's like I need to make sure she goes to a male that has never missed a meal. But I also think it was just it was a weird year. The year that she hatched, I had a lot more African soft furs that year than mice, and so I started everything on soft furs. And I think mice are really the trick for baby bloods. They love that mouse stink, and I think starting them on soft furs was probably my goof.
Mm,
I make sure to keep a very thriving mouse colony now, along with our rats and soft furs, and we do have chickens in case, and then I have a quail guy if I ever need to get quail. But yeah, start them on mice, and they're usually pretty good. I think you can feed them too soon. I like to wait like 10 to 14 days, and they'll pass this little, it looks like urates, but it's like a little crumbly yolk poop is what I call it. And you see that, that's a good time to start offering food. And I think where a lot of keepers kind of tend to go wrong in starting baby bloods is they'll offer them food too soon. And then if the snake doesn't eat, they start changing everything, and they get what I call fiddle with
mm,
syndrome or fiddle fuss syndrome. And it's like, you just got to leave the damn snake alone. Let the snake be a snake, let it feel secure, let it get settled into its enclosure and know what to look for. Give it a place to hide. And when you see that nose just sticking out, that's a hungry snake. And you go and you offer food after dark. I think starting baby blood pythons, if you pre-scent the room with mice for 30 minutes before you offer, that's a great way to get them excited. And they're like, ooh, something smells funky. I want that.
mm,
And you'll see them kind of cruising at the front of their enclosures looking for food. Do things that are going to support your snakes being successful. Pre-scent. Take the time to pre-scent. Take the time to make sure that they have a place to hide and that you can see that behavior that indicates that they want to start feeding. Little things like that. We shouldn't expect these animals to just bend to our will and adapt to whatever we ask them to adapt to. Like, we have to be willing to accommodate them. So.
mm. Yeah, that, I mean, yeah, it's so how long are you waiting after they hatch to offer their first
Oh,
meal?
usually at least a couple of weeks. Sometimes a month. It really depends on the snake. And I have, there are some that will go even longer. Like 6 weeks is about as long as I like to let them go before I think about intervening, and not even necessarily assist feeding, but 6 weeks, like I'll change something up and, maybe give them a deep bed of moss to hide in, or even go with a smaller enclosure. And then if they're not eating by a couple of months in, we're going to really evaluate, is this a snake that needs to be a candidate for Crebo food,
Mm,
or something like that down the line. So I wish,
yeah.
yeah, in the past we've kept other species that do eat snakes, and that was always handy. But need to get back into that, because
Yeah.
chickens aren't as into blood pythons as I've found. They have to be really small before a chicken will eat it. So.
So and how long does it take for them to get their first shed?
Oh, 90. I like most of mine from this year haven't even shed yet, like 90 to 120 days, depending. Some will go as early as 60.
Wow.
But yeah, they take a long time. They have slow metabolisms. That's why, so with baby bloods, you're not waiting for that first shed to feed them, because you'll kill them
Yeah.
first.
Wow.
But yeah, they'll take
So
90 days
my boy
plus.
that my boy that's in his shed cycle right now.
That's his
That is
first
his
shed. That's
first.
his first shed.
That's so
I need all the
crazy.
pictures when he sheds. I'm going to need to see how amazing he looks. So, and to that point, like, I know you were really concerned about temperament and wanting to make sure that, we got you just the right snake. And I'm so just grateful that you were willing to wait for him because he's been awesome. Like, I think he's just been the perfect snake for your situation, if I'm not
Oh
mistaken.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you. That was a super cool experience that
Good.
you like, that, well, just the fact that you hit me up and you're like, hey, I know that you like this male, but why don't you wait and we'll see, like I'll send your female now.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like that whole experience was super cool. And I am, a very patient person, and I'm always willing to wait for something good
Yeah. Yeah.
or for something better. Uh, I've been I only have like 25 snakes. I say
Mm-hmm.
only 25 snakes. That's like, I say that to people at work and they're like, oh my God, that's insane. And
Are they just crawling around in your house?
yeah,
Right.
sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
But, yeah, I remember, so basically everything that I have, I picked out and was very patient and talked to the people. And for me personally, I like talking to breeders and
Mm-hmm.
seeing what they're like before I make my decision,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
have some conversations and see where their passion lies. And if they're as excited about this animal years into breeding, in your case,
Yes.
decades into breeding these animals, as I am, just kind of getting re-excited about short tails and being like, hey, this is something that I want to take time and put time into,
Right.
and yeah, that was a great experience
Good.
for sure.
Good.
And I'm
That's the
super
goal.
excited. I'm so excited to see this guy.
Yeah, me too.
Shed.
Me too.
It's going to be awesome.
That whole clutch. Like, I genuinely don't understand why some of those snakes are still here, because that whole clutch is just like so freaking red. They're just ridiculous. Like David Pitts, who I know is on your Discord, he, and you want to talk about just a really cool guy. Like he picked out this female, and sometimes bloods can get kind of like their world will get rocked in shipping. And she showed up there and she was ready to rumble. And it has taken them a little bit of time to rebuild some trust, but now she's like a puppy for him, and just relaxed and has just done such an amazing job. But the thing that I love about him is that, he reached out and was like, hey, the snake hates me. I'm like, no, you guys just need to get to know each other. And so we made some tweaks to her environment and got it really dialed in. But just like the fact that he was willing to reach out and say, all right, what can we do? And what do I need to do? And how do I need to learn this snake? Because this is his first blood python, and getting to walk through that. And now she's this, easy to hang out with animal. Like that's why the application process is a thing. That's why I want to have that line of communication, that line of support, because again, these are snakes. They're not golden retrievers. They're not puppy dogs. We owe it to them to meet them where they are, and having better customers that really care and that are passionate about the animals and that love to learn and grow, and it really be this experiential thing. Like that's the why. That's so much of the why. And if we're not, I think as breeders, if we're not seeking to help the people who get these animals from us have a better experience, if we're producing so many animals that we don't have that time, that's a problem.
Yeah.
At least in my mind.
How hard is it running the Facebook group and seeing people that are running into problems with animals that they got older as adults and things like that? It's weird. It seems like there's two ends to the spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's people that are like, oh, I don't want a blood python because they're so temperamental. And then there's other people that are getting adult animals and I feel like they're getting them at either a very low cost or no cost, and they're adopting problems. They're adopting either temperament or potentially biosecurity issues. Yeah. How do you deal with that without having a panic attack?
Well, this is why I have a closed collection. This is why I have separate buildings for quarantine. And I sit there and I just thank my lucky stars that that's a thing. And so I look at it and, I think my go-to is people going to peep. And I say that at work a lot. People are going to peep, and you got to let people peep. And you're not going to be able to fix everyone and everything. And people are going to inherit problems. I think biosecurity is a bigger problem than temperament. Blood pythons are highly susceptible to nidovirus. They respiratory issues, because they have such a big lung, take a long time for them to kick. And I think the more times a snake changes hands and you don't know where it's been, you don't know like what it's been exposed to, you're setting yourself up for problems. What makes me nuts is when I see keepers, they just bring a snake in and plop it in the middle of their collection. And it's like, what are you doing? What is that? What are you doing? Why is this snake in a tub with another snake? And you've had the snake for all of 2 seconds. Like, what is this? That makes me just kind of go, you know what? People are going to peep. And you just have to, I think, let people learn the hard way sometimes, which sucks for the animal. I think keepers dealing with temperament issues are a lot easier to give feedback and advice to, because they want to form a relationship with that snake. They want to help the snake have a better experience. People who are loose on biosecurity are probably not going to listen to a whole lot of anything else, I find. And so, again, this is where there are only so many hours in the day. I'm going to put my time into people who are eager to learn, who want to seek advice, who want to help. And that's where I'm going to prioritize. I admin the Facebook group, but it is largely self-contained. There are a lot of very experienced keepers in there. I will intervene if things get, really off the beaten path, husbandry wise. Like if people are just giving bad advice, then yeah, we'll pump the brakes. But I'm not going to be there to answer every question, because it's not feasible. Yeah. So it's hard to see sometimes. It is hard to see, people that just are jumping into these snakes without any intention, any forethought. And then again, the biosecurity issues are the hardest ones to see when they're just practicing bad husbandry or not making sound decisions with their animals. Like that's tough. And the only way that people learn in those situations is to have a bad experience, I find. So.
Yeah. The acquisition of adult animals scares the crap out of me.
Yep.
Like it's and I didn't think about that in the, kind of when I got back into the hobby, just how dangerous that can be. If you don't know where that animal is coming from or where it's been, or how many other animals were in the collection, and whether or not those were having persistent, reoccurring, respiratory infections, and like my Argentine, I got her as, I think she was 2 or 3 when I got her. And hindsight, I wouldn't have done that. I'm really happy that I did do it now, and that she is super duper healthy, and that she's a fantastic animal. But man, it's hard to quarantine a 5.5 foot long Argentine.
Yeah. Occidentalis are not small snakes. They're big, they're beefy, they're active. What line is she from? Do you know?
I don't know. Gotcha. So that was a joint pairing between Brian Cusco and Travis. What's his last name? Johnson. Okay. And I had Travis on the show, and he said that was from one of my females that unfortunately I don't know the line. And I think he went on to get some animals directly from Vin, Occidentalis.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's a mystery, but she's my favorite snake in the entire world.
Yeah, she's gorgeous. She's stunning.
And her personality is incredible too. Like she's just like an incredible animal. And, I weighed her last night. She is 12.5 pounds.
Beefy girl.
She's ready to fast. She's ready to not eat for like 4 months.
I bet.
So
right. That's so funny.
She's had some jumbo rats. I've been giving her jumbo rats like every 3 weeks for the past maybe 2 or 3 months. I wanted to ramp her up in like right before the fast, and she kind of chunked up quite a bit. So she's ready for the winter now.
That's awesome.
I love them so much. Yeah, I have her, and then I recently got a Bisset line. The what's the actual line? It's O something, OF or OF,
Oh,
I think it is.
OS, Ophiological Services, if it was from
Yes.
Eugene. Yeah.
Yep. So I got a boy
Mm.
that is OS, and then I have a pair of Fortune lines Occidentalis,
I don't
and
fortune jog my memory on
oh
those. I've
man,
been out of boas for so long. It's like, oh,
yeah, it's so I'll tell you the story. I've told it a million times,
okay.
so I don't but it's so they I think it was in the late 90s, early 2000s, somebody tried to smuggle Argentines into the country, and they got confiscated
Mm-hmm.
in California and then sent to the Seattle Zoo where Edgar Fortune
Gotcha.
reproduced them.
Cool.
And so there is and I even hit up Edgar Fortune. I'm like, is this story true? And he gave me a thumbs up, and I'm like, all right, cool.
Wow. That's really
So
cool. That's really cool.
yeah, so they are that I think that they are the coolest boa in my opinion. They're just so different,
Mm-hmm.
and they have so much spunk when they're
They
babies,
do.
but
That constant hiss.
yeah, but they so consistently mellow out
Yes.
too that
Yes.
it's, there's a lot to love there. But yeah, what were we talking about? We weren't talking about
We were
boas.
talking about biosecurity and people
Oh
inheriting
yeah,
adult blood pythons and all of the issues that come with them.
yeah. So walk me through your quarantine,
Oh,
because you kind of piqued my interest there when you
yeah.
said like separate buildings.
Yeah. So, well, we don't have snakes in the house, which is lovely. We tore down our house in 2016 and built a new one. And we lived in a camper for 90 days. That was really fun because we did a modular home. And
Nice.
had two Great Danes and a 9-year-old at the time. That was a trip. And so, we were on a little farm property out here in the middle of nowhere. And so we had a separate building where we could build out a new snake area room. And we have two buildings in addition to the house where it's set up for animals. So that we have different locations if we need to quarantine or keep, different temperatures. Like we had, the last snakes that Ryan kept were, um, king rat snakes. And
Mm,
so those were in the house because they need cooler temperatures than out with the blood pythons. So anyway, for example, I acquired some snakes from Kindra this year, and those are in the house and they'll quarantine over here for a minimum of 90 days. Usually 6 months is what I prefer. And then I'll consider integrating them into the collection after they've been nido tested and serpentivirus and just everything, run a full panel and say, all right, are they okay? And even then I get angsty. I shouldn't, because I've been out there and I know what every single snake in that collection looks like and what their health is. But I think anytime you're just bringing something from one population to another, there's a risk because every captive population of snakes has its own bioflora. And that's just something you have to keep in mind. And so I do a minimum of 90 days. 6 months is typical. And then separate tools, work different animals, different days. Like there's just no cross contamination at all.
mm.
So
Walk me through your snake buildings. Like what are they like?
they're not snake specific. So there's other stuff that goes on in those buildings too. But so Ryan has a workshop and we have just a heated room over there and it's, temperature controlled. There's nothing in that one right now. Our main snake room is, I'm trying to remember the dimensions. Shoot, it's like 500 square feet. So it's not huge.
Okay.
But it's enough to, we have a couple hundred animals, and so everything is kind of out in the main room and it's temperature controlled. I monitor everything with sensor push. I have security cameras. Um, no, nothing goes in or out of that room that I'm not aware of, because I see you. It's on camera. Um, and we have windows and our lights over there are triggered off of the light cycle, so they just naturally adjust to whatever the light cycle is outside, which is really nice.
Nice.
And then, we have it set up for air exchange. I love being able to go up and just open windows and ventilate the entire room if I need to. And yeah, it's just my favorite thing about it. And this is what's wonderful about being married to a master electrician who is also a snake keeper, is that all of our plugins are on the ceiling.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. And we have them at shoulder height on the walls and then on the ceiling. And so it's just, there are no cords on the floor. And I love
Nice.
it. I love it. It's the best thing you can do in
Yeah.
your snake room is have your plugins on the ceiling.
Yeah, and you don't have to reach behind anything or.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. It's wonderful.
Yeah, when I've kind of been planning a snake building, and ideally it'll be 38 long and 16 wide,
Okay.
which is about 500 square foot, but there's going to be like a 10 by 16 room that'll be like a washroom with freezers and dishwashers and all that good stuff, incubators. And then in there, it'll just be, all the plugs 80 inches up off the ground, that way it can all, it's technically like above the cages. And, oh man, it'll be incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we'll see if it happens, time, everything takes time.
It does. Time and money, neither of which grow on trees. If you get into the electrical on that and have any questions, hit us up.
Okay. Cool.
Ryan has walked many a snake keeper through getting all their electrical Like I remember when Nick built his building, and just going through all the schematics and some of the things that he needed to do to make sure everything was all dialed in. It's amazing. It's a beautiful facility. But just Ryan walked him through all of that, and it was just really cool to see that come to fruition.
So what are let's talk about the three different species of short tails. Let's get into that. Let's start with bloods and then go from there.
Bloods are probably my favorite of the three. I'll go ahead and say that because I like red snakes. Blood pythons are the largest, Python brongersmi, of the three species. Although I will say most of them are pretty similar, at least with the way that they're kept and fed in captivity. They're big and smalls at every end of the spectrum, and all three species. Blood pythons have the widest range. So Sumatra, Malaysia, Thailand, different outlying islands through Indonesia, they are the most widespread. They're also the species that sees the heaviest impact from skinning. They are the only species of the three that comes in red, and hence the name blood python. Sumatran short-tailed pythons, which do integrate with brongersmi in the wild, just marginally at a few spots in their range in Sumatra. There are two primary races. There's the northern race, which is orange-headed or yellow-headed. A lot of people call them pumpkin heads. It's a cool look. And the southern race that comes in either black, brown, or chrome-headed. And the jet black ones are probably my favorite of those. They tend to be the most laid back of all three species. But, again, personality is largely individual and dependent on line. They are the only species that comes in a true black of the three. Brongersmi can be an incredibly dark red or an incredibly dark brown, but you'll never see them in that same glossy black that you see a Python curtis. And then they were the nominate species. All three species used to be subspecies of Python curtis up until, I want to say it was like 99 or 2000, when Dave Barker and a couple others worked on the systematic that elevated them to species status. And then the third one is Python brightensteini, which is the Borneo python or Borneo short-tailed python. And they come from Borneo and Sarawak, and they are different shades of brown, all from like a very dark walnut brown up to, light gold, a lot of striping in Borneos. They didn't have really pretty yellow or orange heads. And for whatever reason, they tend to be the least popular of the three species, at least in modern herpetoculture. I remember, early on, they were incredibly popular. I want to say they were the first of the three species to be bred in captivity, at least with any regularity. And they're neat snakes. I don't know why they're as underrated as they are, but they're just really cool. If you like brown or shades of brown, so that might have something to do with it. There also aren't any like wild and crazy morphs outside of the T positives and the different stripes. And I know a lot of people love mutations, so that may be why. Husbandry for all three species is identical. They want to be kept cool. They want to be kept 78 to 82 degrees is really the sweet spot. I do think they do better with a warm spot of 86 to 88, depending. Like 88 is more for gravid females, but a lot of people keep them at ambient temperatures year round and do fine with them. They are a species that'll get really cranked up if they're too hot and too wet. So that's kind of a key consideration for husbandry.
So how do you balance the humidity? Do they like high humidity, or do you think that's kind of overrated?
So I think it has to be dialed in individually if you're really going to do justice to the snakes. They do not want to sit there and be swampy. And I know everybody loves to say they're swamp snakes, so let them sit in the swamp. Yeah, absolutely. Give them high humidity from the perspective of you're misting a cage or spraying a cage. You should not have a blood python ever sitting there on sodden, gross, soaking bedding that is just muck. They, in a captive environment where these snakes have very high urine output, you've got that ammonia buildup that is going to create respiratory irritation. And so like my main room is calibrated to like 60% humidity, which is more than sufficient year round. And then if a snake is going into shed, I will mist them. Like my routine is to go out there. I'll do cage checks every day. I'm in there looking, and then I'm just misting whoever needs misted. But by evening, those cages are back down to 60%. They may peak at 80 or 90% or even 100% when I'm spraying them, but they're back down to 60% by the end of the day. And then we do the same thing over the next day or every other day. These snakes don't need to be kept soaking wet, and wet conditions, swampy conditions, lots of ammonia, maybe negligent husbandry. That is why blood pythons are very prone to respiratory infections. And I think people tend to keep them in enclosures that are too small. Bloods can be kept quite successfully in rack systems if the rack is big enough. Like my big girls are in the 9706 ARS racks, and they can stretch out completely. And
what are the dimensions of those?
I want to say they're like 50. Thanks. 52 inches long by. I'd have to look at the depth. Hang on. Let me click over to the ARS site real quick, and I'll tell you.
What did you say the tub was again?
It's the 9706. And I'm looking that up right now because I do not remember these things off the top of my head. But all right, so the tub is 51.75 by 25 and a quarter deep. Essentially, so it's like a 4x2.
Okay.
Yeah. And I have big girls in those cages, and they will stretch out diagonally across them and be perfectly comfortable. And most of the time they want to cram themselves under a hide box. Or one thing I love that they do, is because I keep everything on cocoa husk. They will scooch all the cocoa husk up into this big pile and then sit in the pile. And it's really cute. It's really cute. I love it. So
I keep my quarantine animals for the first 6 weeks on paper. And when it might have been more than that, honestly. I might have went like 90 days on paper towels,
and that's
right?
A mess.
Yeah. But once I set them up with the coconut husk, they seem so much happier.
They are,
because they love getting like halfway down in that and just sticking their head up.
That's what they do. That's a blood python being a blood python. In the wild, these snakes are sitting under leaf litter. They're a species that has done incredibly well with the unfortunate rise of palm plantations, because palm plantations attract rats. And so you've got all these palm fronds on the ground. You've got blood pythons sitting under the palm fronds, snatching rats as they run by. And they love to sit under leaf litter. They love to sit under any kind of cover, and they're ambush predators. And so,
I mean, I know I talked with Sean about that on his episode, just the way that their head looks. It's so leaf-like.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yes.
Like even like their scalation is almost like the vasculature of a leaf,
Yeah,
where it's
it's
got like the,
really pretty.
it's so cool.
It
It's
really
so
is.
cool.
Yeah.
And being able to see them in that substrate, it makes you appreciate it that much more, where it's
Oh
like, oh
yeah.
man, they're getting to do what they want to do,
Yep. Absolutely.
Uh, so how do you keep up with the urine and the substrate?
I go through a lot of cocoa husk. Part of my, well, and this is where it's great because again, we're out here on our little farm. And so we have a huge garden. And so, the soiled cocoa husk goes out to the compost pile, and then it composts, then it goes into the garden, and then garden vegetables go to feed our rat colony. And so it's like this whole big circle of life thing we have going on. It's kind of fun. But no, it's every day, I'm out there doing the whiff test. And is the enclosure clean and fresh? Are there wet spots? If there are wet spots, I'm scooping all that out and it's going in the compost pile. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of maintenance. But the snakes are less reactive, more content. And to me, that's worth it. And it's great filler for the garden. And so it's just, to me, it's worth it. There's no one perfect substrate for every enclosure, every snake room, every situation. And I think people are always chasing that holy grail of substrate, and it doesn't exist. You have to say, all right, this is the juice that is worth the squeeze from my situation. And like for me, that's fine. I will invest money into cocoa husk every year because my snakes are happy with it, and it has a purpose here beyond just the snake room. And that way it's like that perfect level of humidity versus maintenance versus sustainability. And, like if I were keeping everything on paper, like my babies are on paper up till about 400 grams, and then I switch them over. And if I were keeping everything on paper, I just think it would be too much. It would be so much, just the constant having to swap stuff out. As to where with the cocoa husk, I find they seem to stay better hydrated. It's just, we have a system and it works really well. So
why do you keep them on paper when they're that young?
I don't like to see babies grabbing a mouthful. They're such enthusiastic feeders that I don't like to see them grab a mouthful of substrate. I have seen a couple of babies get impacted from that. And until they get a little bit bigger and they have more control, it's just not a chance I like to take. I lost a really nice animal to an impaction. And this is years ago, where it had just gotten a big chunk of cocoa and had swallowed it and couldn't pass it. And so, and I, found it after the fact, and that was just really, really a bummer. So I just said, you know what, we're going to reduce the chances of that happening again. Have not had a problem since. And I know in the wild, nobody's out, running interference for these snakes. But in captivity, it's a much different set of circumstances. And so let's be smart about, what we're doing. And that's why I keep them on paper up to a certain size and switch them over and they're good. So, yeah.
Yeah. My female I got from you, Karma, she is, that's another positive aspect of feeding in the tub too, is, separate from the substrate. That way she's not eating that. And, she was really enthusiastic, and now I'll hang the rat in front of her, and now she just comes up and opens her mouth and starts eating it. And I'm like, that's fine too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They don't need to act like retics. Like I have a lot of snakes that like to be drop fed. And a lot of keepers like that. Like they like that you can just drop a rodent in and it's gone the next day. That's fine.
It's more, it feels more domesticated, and it makes me feel like, all right, well, if you're this chill about your food, then I know that you're going to be pretty laid back when I go in there. Like even if you think I'm food, you're not going to launch yourself at me, which is, not a bad thing all the time.
Get back to me when you keep your first Python Curtis.
I don't know if that's going to ever happen. I know Sean, that's like Sean's, favorite.
Yeah.
It won't be happening right now in the house. I've taken up too much real estate until I have a building, all
right. So we won't send Adam a Curtis. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Cause that is the one species that I keep that they keep me on my toes. Like they will every single time. As soon as they get a whiff of a rodent, they come flying out like a Mack truck, and it just never fails. Like they're just Looney Tunes for food. And
Yeah.
You cannot drop feed them. You can't get the rat into the enclosure fast enough to drop feed them.
Oh man, it's funny when they get really dialed in on something,
so
and the tongue starts going a million miles an hour. You know, it's like, yeah, it's such a fun thing.
Yeah, it is. They're neat.
So you prefer a hot spot of 86 to 88.
86 is really where most of them stay. I will, like once a female ovulates, I'll crank it up to 88. But 86 just really seems to be that sweet spot. And they use it, you know, they'll, especially when they're digesting food, like they'll just go over and throw like a single coil or just a part of their body. Like, hey, I'm going to put my kidney on the hot spot or something like that. They'll just have like a little area of their body on it, but they actively use it. So I figure if they're going to use it, make sure it's there.
Yeah, I've noticed that they utilize their environment for sure.
Yes.
Even just, you know, having them in the rack so far, if they eat, then they go over the heat.
Yes.
You know, it's not, you know, some snakes you're like, what are you doing? Why are you in the cold area?
Right.
You just ate, you know, what's wrong with you?
Be a snake.
Yeah. Go utilize that. But so I'm almost wondering if I'm ready to move mine into their 4x2s. They're growing so fast.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. And it's kind of getting to that point where I'm starting to think it might be time. I guess I could always put the tub in the enclosure.
Yes. That's what I was going to suggest. Like use the tub as a hide and just put the whole thing in the enclosure and let them get their bearings. That works really well for transitioning a snake into a larger enclosure.
Okay. And would you recommend doing that kind of on the cold side or in the middle and then let them decide when they want to come out?
Yeah, in the middle, you know, kind of in the middle. And that way they can go either way. If they want to seek cooler areas, if they want to seek warmer areas, they can, you know, monitor closely. If you see major changes in behavior or reluctance to feed, it may be time to back them off. But usually once a snake like kind of outgrows that first juvenile tub, they're pretty confident and they're okay going into a larger enclosure. And like, that's something where we've really made an effort to start keeping even our young snakes in much bigger tubs. Once they're established feeding, we like to bump them up. Because a lot of keepers want to put snakes in display cages and they want to be able to see their animals and enjoy them. And I think we do them a service by, acclimating a snake to a larger enclosure at a younger age. And so that transition is easier for them. So
do you think that, you know, because I've talked to a lot of people and a lot of people, you know, really advocate for keeping short tails in tubs, you know, but then there's a lot of keepers that want to keep in large display enclosures. And why wouldn't you want to with, you know, especially like if you're getting a blood python from you, it's a freaking beautiful animal. And it's nice to be able to walk through a room and say like, oh my God, look at this, you know,
or look at its head sticking up out of the substrate. So, cause that's probably all you're going to see. They, you know, bloods are amazing. They make really crappy display snakes because they're always hiding. They're always hiding. It's very, you know, they're out nocturnally. So yeah, go in and check your snakes with a red light at night if you want to enjoy them, but they're not going to be out like a jungle carpet python or like a D'Albert's python and where you can really enjoy that, or a diamond python. And so that is kind of the bummer, but I do think that they're, you know, as keepers, we have to adapt. We have to be aware of what is going to put any animal that we produce in the most optimum environment. And again, this is why you don't pair up every snake you have every year. You don't need to make a million babies. You don't need to make a million clutches if you're breeding intentionally. If you are aiming for that snake to have a great life with a pet keeper or a great life with, you know, someone who wants to have a display animal, acclimate your babies to bigger enclosures. I think it makes sense. You know, when they're hatchlings and they need to be in something small to get established and get feeding, because baby bloods are delicate, they dry out very quickly and they can be derpy about water. Not to the point that hognose snakes are, but they can just be dumb sometimes. Like you have to pick them up and pop, like, this is your water cup, drink it. And once they figure that out, they're great. But I think that, you know, if we are going to equip our snakes to be optimally successful long-term, there's no harm in getting them accustomed to a bigger enclosure
Hmm.
and getting accustomed to, transitioning into something that is less stressful as they move to a new environment. Like I will send the paper with them, the same kind of paper. And I send kind of an info sheet, and my instruction is use this as a hide. Let the snake sit under the paper, because then it's something that they're accustomed to. And just little
Hmm.
things like that can help them acclimate to a new home. Why wouldn't we do that?
Yeah.
If we're not
Yeah.
treating these animals like commodities, if we're not having rows and rows and rows of snakes stacked up in boxes, if we are breeding fewer snakes, keeping them in bigger enclosures, and approaching it with intention, why wouldn't we do that?
What got you to that place to where you think of it that way?
Have you ever had to clean 400 snakes, and by the time you're done with one end of the room, start back at the other? No, I'll tell you what got me to that place. Working at Nerd, and Kevin walked into my blood python room at one point, and this is no shade on Kevin, but I had a female Borneo python that I was not breeding that year, and he was like, "Why isn't the snake paired up?" I said, "Because I'm not breeding her this year. She's getting this year off. Pair her up. Everything has to pay rent." And that just broke me.
Hmm.
That broke my heart. And I understand, like, that was his livelihood. He had a huge building with a huge mortgage. Like, the mortgage there at the time was 35 grand a month. His overhead was 35 grand a month. It
Wow.
was bonkers. But that was what really pushed me to saying, I don't want to do snakes full time ever again in my life. They are a hobby. I have a full-time job. I work 50 some odd hours a week at my regular job, and then I come play with snakes and birds. I don't want to have to rely on an animal that I love to pay my bills, because then it's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope, and I
Hmm.
will not do that. I would rather not keep snakes at all than feel like I have to breed everything every year just to have stuff to sell to pay the bills. Won't do it.
Hmm. Yeah, and that has to take a toll on the animal too, right? The
Yeah.
females, if they're breeding constantly.
Yeah. I don't breed snakes, but like I have some snakes in my snake room that are females that are 6, 7, 8 years old. They've had one clutch.
Hmm.
I have them because I love them. And that's one, and I realize that's a luxury, right? To be able to have these animals and want to seek a very specific clientele. Like, I'm picky. I brag on my customers. I have the best customers. My customers take amazing care of their snakes. They stay in touch with me. I get pictures, I get video updates, I get, all of this great feedback. And I realize that that's not how everybody does things. I'm fortunate to be able to do that, but it's also a decision that I've made to, if I get to sell snakes, that's cool. But it's not something I'm depending on to make ends meet, or to pay the bills. It's because it's a hobby that I love. And I want to make sure that the way that my animals are cared for and the way that I'm able to select their future homes reflects my values in doing that.
Hmm.
Because I don't think that having, 400 or something stacked up in plastic boxes means that we really truly love them. And at least it doesn't for me. And so I think keeping fewer snakes in bigger enclosures, and it not mattering if a snake stays here for 2 years before it ever finds a new home, or even longer, I would rather be more comfortable with that, and know that snake is going to end up in an ideal spot, than to feel like I've got to just pump them out and get them out the door.
Hmm.
I can't do that. So
Do you have any snakes that you have like a real like bond or a connection with?
yeah,
Like they just hit different?
yeah, yeah. My golden eye male from Nick, especially now. His name is Warpaint, and yeah, I just love him. We hang out. Like, he's one of the few that I'll just hang out with to hang out with. Some of my older girls, that I've had for years and years and years, like, those are really special. I have a big T positive albino male named Indeed. He's like this big derpy sweetheart, and I
Hmm.
just adore him. Yeah, and all of my snakes have names. They all have personalities. Like, they have an ID number too, but they also have a name, and they have their quirks. And I know, like, I could tell when my females are starting to build follicles just because of the way they're sitting in their enclosures. and the way that they're acting. Normally they'll be at the front of the tub going, "Oh, I want a rat." But if she's over in the corner and she's sitting in these stacked coils, I'm like, "You want to get pregnant," that kind of thing, because because she's building follicles and her behavior is different. And I just know that because I'm looking at her every day, and I can see when that behavior changes. And it's so fun. So
I had Lisa Farina on, and I remember she kind of said that I can't remember our exact conversation, but she was more cued into her female snakes and the way that their behavior, and she's really dialed into sort of like their hormonal changes and everything. Is that something that you identify with? Is that something that you see as well?
Yeah, totally. Just knowing their behavior, pretty much hang on, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I probably have 8 females here that I did not raise from babies out of all the snakes we have. So these girls have been with me for their entire lives. And you just get to know them. You get to know their, and the voice too. Like you can tell when a male is like, "Hey, I'm looking for love," because they're acting different. Like they're not interested in food, or they're cruising, or they're, just acting a little more outgoing. But the females especially, you just get to know, their quirks and their mannerisms and when they start to cycle. And yeah, you just, if you're observing and you're paying attention, they tell you exactly what's going on. And then what's really cool is that if you start to take really good notes and you pivot that data and you're looking at it over years and years and years, and you start to see patterns with them, that's fun. That's really cool stuff. So I love that about them.
Yeah. I love how much you love your snakes.
Thank you.
It's such a cool thing.
They, I spend a lot of time with people, coaching and developing people. Like that's my job. And I use animals a lot in coaching, and I don't think that you can do that without really appreciating these animals for what they are. And so after spending 9 hours a day with people and pouring so much into them, being able to go out to the silence of my snake room, which Phil King, now that I have crickets out there for my tarantulas, it's not so silent. I blame you, Phil. I do.
I have a scorpion in my damn bedroom.
Right? Yeah.
And I was laying in bed listening to the crickets because I fed the scorpion last night and he didn't get all of them.
Right.
And then I hear him like smashing into the plastic, grabbing the crickets.
Phil, this is all your fault. I have a bunch of tarantulas now because of Phil. But being able to go out there and just be with the snakes and the silence of that, and just the rhythms, like you'll hear someone, bopping the side of a tub, or maybe they're crawling around and banging a water bowl around because they want a rat, or it's a horny male or whatever. And again, just knowing their behavior, just being able to, like, I have a chair in my snake room that I'll go out there and just sit with the snake in my lap and just chill. And that's a great way to just decompress after a very busy, stressful day. And, it's a gift to be able to do that. Like especially in this economy and just the state of the world being what it is, being able to interact with these animals is a luxury. But it's also it feels like an essential. Like life would be lesser without these animals in it. But at the same time, we can just never lose sight of the fact that it is a gift to be able to do what we do with them, and to enjoy them, and to pour back as much into them as they pour into us. And yeah, it's amazing.
When Jeff Croce went out to Nerd, you were there, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love Jeff. So I've known Jeff since like 2003, I think. And yeah, he came out to hang out, and Jeff is just as much fun in person as he is online. Jeff is just one of the coolest people I know. We share a birthday. He's 4 years older than me, but we share the same birthday. And he's the best person in the world to share a birthday with. Like, I have the coolest birthday buddy ever. And Jeff is just one of these people who I've known for a million years. And man, is life so much better with him in it. And so getting to hang out with him and spend time, and he's this incredible artist, and
I know.
and just a Renaissance man. Like, I feel like Jeff is legitimately a Renaissance man. Like, he's this amazing chef, an amazing artist, and he gardens and he hunts and he makes
Yeah.
sausage, and he just has this insatiable curiosity for life, but he's so down to earth. And I mean, you've spent, he's been on your show, you know what Jeff's about.
Oh yeah.
And he's just one of
Whenever he calls, I'm like,
right.
I got to call him back, and then it's going to be an hour and 15 minutes
100%,
later.
100%. Yes. He's just one of those people that I'm so grateful to know through snakes. Because I got this really amazing friend out of it. And, yeah, Jeff is legit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy how many people you meet through this hobby,
Totally.
that you talk to on a daily basis. And we were talking Phil, King
Phil.
and Sean Perry, Sound Serpents. We were all talking the other day, and it's like, hey, I said to Phil, I'm like, hey, if I go to Colubrid Fest, you got to come to Daytona, and then, it'd be cool to have a couple times a year, be able to get together and see everybody in person. And, it'd be cool if you could come out to Daytona too, Kara. I'm just saying.
I've not been to Daytona since 2008.
So you're due.
Come to Tinley. Like, I'm trying to talk Sean and Kathleen to coming out here and staying with us before Tinley next year, and then we all drive out together.
That would be cool.
Yeah, because Tinley's only like 5.5 hours from here, which I love to drive. So that's just, driving is so much fun. I'm more likely to go to Tinley than I am to go back to Daytona, just because, man, that's a long trip.
Yeah, that is a long
trip. And
it's very far.
And Tinley's more of the right time of year too, I think, now, especially now. Ryan and I are empty nesters this year, and my stepdaughter, his daughter, played travel softball for a lot of years, and so we were a softball family for ever. And so now it's like, hey, let's actually talk about going to some reptile shows. But yeah, I don't know that I'll ever make it back to Daytona, but like Colubrid Fest is definitely on the radar. Tinley is definitely on the radar. Would love to hang out. Come to the Midwest, man. Midwest is cool.
Yeah, it's out there and it's cold.
October Tinley is not bad. You would survive. We'll get you a cool hoodie. So
you had mentioned Crebos and Indigos before.
Mm-hmm.
I am kind of going down a dry Marcone rabbit hole myself.
Tell me more. Did you get very far?
I'm all like, Eastern Indigos are super cool, especially being in Florida. And I saw one when I was a kid, and it kind of imprinted on me.
Wow.
So there's that experience. So I like this, giant black colubrid is, a really just a very cool thing. But then like I'll see a yellowtail Crebo and I'm like, man, that's really cool too. So like the black phase Texas Indigos are absolutely gorgeous. I've been talking with Kevin Butts, who breeds Texas Indigos, and he breeds them to be like no pattern, just like pure black. Ooh. And yeah, absolutely incredible. And I'm going to be having John Michaels on, who, obviously is, Black Pearl, like the king of dry Marcon. And they're just super cool snakes. I'm kind of viewing them the same way that I view the blood pythons, though, where I'm like, I really need to research these a lot before I get one.
Big time.
And also figure out what direction I want to go in, because there is so much variety there and I can't have them all.
Right. And they're not cheap.
I cannot.
These are not inexpensive snakes. They require significant housing. So yeah, I feel you. We should bounce some ideas back and forth on that, because I just need a big Eastern male. I just need a big Eastern indigo snake in my life. And I just want a big boy to go in a display cage in my office and eat blood pythons.
Oh wow.
That's what I want.
Yeah. So so how big would that cage be for that male?
I'd probably do like an 8-foot enclosure, I think, for that.
Yeah.
Because I in the process of redoing my office, and I have all these tarantulas in it right now, and I want to add an indigo, a crebo, some Europlatus fantasticus, and then probably like some millipedes, that kind of stuff. But I just, animals are such an intrinsic part of the coaching that I do, that it's like I want to just have like this really cool wall of animals that are fun for my teams to interact with. And so I think, like a big 8-foot enclosure for a big Eastern indigo would be just a blast. So
Lucas
long-term
Lee
goals.
has babies right now.
Listen, Linda. No, I have to stop buying tarantulas before that's ever going to become a thing, because yeah. Phil, again, I blame you. No.
Oh, I know. I have all these tarantulas now, and I've been talking with Johnny Venom, and right? I'm like, oh man, centipedes are really cool. And he's like, I'll send you some. And I'm like, I don't think my wife is going to let it happen.
Yeah. Centipedes are a whole different ballgame. But
yeah.
So what direction are you leaning? Like, I know you love to do your big, beautiful enclosures, and what are you thinking?
For the indigos?
Yeah.
I want to get a female first because they're smaller, and I want to have the experience and see if I would want to get a male to pair up with her eventually. I think that would be a solid plan to ease into it and just get a female, keep her in a 4x2 for a little while, let her grow, experience it, see how bad the poops are, because they're kind of gnarly. Yeah, that's like my biggest fear, is the cleanup. That's like probably the most, that's giving me the most apprehension. But then again, it was the pee with the blood pythons.
Yeah. And
then now that I have them, I'm like,
it's not that bad.
It's not that bad.
Really, it's not that. It's like, you just stay on top of it, don't be.
Yeah.
One thing I will say for the dry markon is, look into coarse grade Sani chips. There are the little tiny fine Sani chips, but then coarse grade Sani chips, we've used those over the years with the blood pythons. And I think ultimately long-term, they're probably a little bit too dried, but for colubrids, it's almost like cat litter in a way, because it just clumps up and it desiccates the feces pretty quickly. And so that might be a way to keep the smell down. We, back when I was at Nerd, one of the confiscations that came to us was an Eastern indigo from a school teacher there in New Hampshire that had one and didn't have the permits, and he had it in his classroom, and it got confiscated, and they brought it to the shop. And I got to care for this animal for, I would say it was at least 90 days that it was with us. And what was really cool is that State Fish and Game, they helped the guy get his permit for it so he could go back to his classroom.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he got a citation and all of that stuff with it, but they ultimately helped him get his snake back, which I thought was just a really cool move because it was being used for education. And I just remember like taking care of that snake and not like, it wasn't any worse than some of the other colubrids I've dealt with. So, and Sani chips are great for, I think, anything that poops a lot. So.
Yeah, I was talking with Brooke, Stephen Cush's girl. She has like a dozen, not even counting the babies, indigos, the cool. Mexicans. Very and cool. Yeah, they're super cool animals. And she was saying that her substrate mix is it's like mulch and something else and play sand. Like she does because she said that they like to burrow, and so she kind of gives them like this really, kind of robust, thick mixture that they can kind of tunnel through and everything. And yeah, they're super cool. I think I'm eyeing a female indigo, I think, but yeah, hot dog. They are. I can't wait to talk with John Michaels and really pick his brain and get into it.
Yeah, there's probably going to be a lot.
There's going to be a lot of Crebo and Indigo content coming soon.
Sweet, I am totally here for that. That's going to be amazing. So
that's hilarious that you mentioned that you're kind of into them as well.
Well, again, I blame Phil. Phil, yeah. I'm sorry, you're my scapegoat for this episode. Apparently, Phil has Kirby, who is his wonderful Crebo, and Phil was going through some stuff with baby blood pythons that wouldn't eat, and finally had to make kind of the tough call to say, all right,
Yeah.
we're going to
Failure to thrive.
complete the circle of life here. And so I made the joke, instead of from farm to table, he's from tub to tongue. And it was, yeah. So,
and you know what I was thinking about for a male enclosure, if I don't have a building in place, would be, I think it would be really, really cool to do a enclosure that is in the center of my other snake area that goes down the center of the room, and have it be like 30 inches high and then 8 feet long and maybe 30 inches wide, and have a lip with like lighting around the entire thing under the lip.
Yeah.
And so you kind of look down into the enclosure and then scape it out with a bunch of sticks and hides and all sorts of stuff. And yeah, I and maybe like windows on the sides too. I'm not sure, but something where like, I think that would, A, it would fit, and B, I think it would look really cool too, especially since they don't need overhead heating or anything like that, since you can keep them ambient.
Yeah.
I'm like, that might be kind of neat.
That would be fascinating. I would love to see that come to fruition. Yeah, do that, please.
Yeah, I'm like, I said, I'm like looking at the room and I'm like, well, there's a lot of open space in the middle of the room.
Right. And put it like a top on one corner, and it could be like your workstation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even a cushion, and it could be like a bench.
There you go. Yeah. You could, a lot of things you could do with that. Build a bookcase around it for all your snake books. That's what you do, is or something.
So I want to talk about Nick Bottini, because I know that you were close to him, and anybody that had any kind of a relationship with him, I've been, I know that talking about people, keeps them alive, and so, to talk to me about Nick, just like when did you first meet him, and your relationship with him, and let's work through that if you're down.
Yeah, I'm down. Gosh, I met Nick. Pretty sure Nick was still in high school at one of the White Plains shows in New York. Because Nick was 10 years younger than me. And just like what a passionate snake keeper, and we really just hit it off. Nick had kept a lot of different species. His parents were so supportive of this love of animals that he had. And I remember the first time he came to the shop and was just geeking out over everything. The blood pythons were cool because that's what we were both into at the time. But just, crocodile monitors and retics and timber rattlesnakes and cobras. And there was not a single animal that he did not just absolutely love. And, he was just super, super down to earth. Wasn't afraid to tell people what he thought of things. What you saw was what you got. And you just, New York through and through. And I remember when he told me he was moving to South Carolina to work for the zoo, Riverbanks Zoo, where he was a herpetologist. And I remember when he told me he met the girl he was going to marry, Kendra, who is she's now the curator of aquarium, or the lead aquarist. She's the curator. She's up there on the food chain. I'm going to butcher it. I'm sorry, Kendra. I just butchered that, but she's really important with fish. And I remember the day he told me he was going to ask her to marry him. And then in 2017, when he reached out and said, I'm going to do blood pythons full time. I'm going to leave the zoo and do blood pythons full time. And just all of it. There's not a snake in my collection that is not influenced by Nick in some way, because we were friends for so many years. And just everything. We talked about everything. This is the first year in probably 22 years that I am making plans for my breeding season, not bouncing them off Nick. And that sucks. and I miss my friend. And there are still days that I think I'm going to pick up the phone and it's going to be him. He had such an eye for quality. You know, he would always rave about the color and the quality and the pedigrees and everything that I was working on. But you look at his snakes and they were every bit as beautiful. And I've told him that multiple times. Was just he had reached a depth of quality with his animals that his are the very few that I've brought into our collection in the past 10 years. You know, the most recent outside acquisitions I have are all from Cold-Blooded Earth. He had an eye. There are a few people that I've met that have an inside line with animals that are they're naturally wired for them. They have that confidence that they get animals on a level that not many people do. Steve Irwin was one. Kevin McCurley's one. Sean Perry is one. Nick Bettini is one. And there are other keepers that I feel like fall into into that category, but those four for sure. Is just evident in the way that they interact with snakes and the way that they have that it's like they're part snake themselves. And Nick was like that. And Sean Perry is very much like that too. But just Nick had a way of like seeing a vision of these snakes into the future, and he could execute on that vision so strategically. And I think as a community, as a short-tailed python community, we haven't even begun to felt the extent of this loss. I never would have. I talked to Nick 3 days before it happened, and I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known. The only thing that kind of tipped me off is he was like, "Hey, do you have time to talk?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And he let me know he was going to be stepping away from snakes, that it was just time for him to go a different direction, and he was going to start downsizing the collection. I was like, "Okay, yeah, if you're at that point, then I 100% support that, and I know it's the best thing for you." And then not 3 days later, I got a text from Kendra that, at 5:00 in the morning, that Nick had taken his own life the night before. And I think the few seconds every morning before I wake up and reality sets in are probably the best part of the day. And it just goes to show how fragile mental health is. And no matter how amazing somebody's life looks on the outside, you never know. You never know what burden someone is struggling with or what they're carrying. And Kendra, when she made the announcement on their Facebook page, she said, "Look after one another, be kind, tell people you love them." And we all need to do better with that every day, because the world is a really scary place for a lot of people right now. I think a lot of people don't know where they fit into it. A lot of people don't feel like they can reach out for help. And that's why we lose amazing people like Nick. And nobody should ever feel like their life is a burden. Nobody should ever feel like they can't reach out. And I think to that, I say, if you're ever in that spot, like if you go to bloodpythons.com, there's actually a page, the CBE Forever page on our site that has a bunch of mental health resources on it. And call me, reach out to me, call me. I will talk you off whatever ledge. We will talk. I will come find you if I need to, and we'll sit through it. But I don't ever want to see anybody else go through what Nick's family has gone through. I've been up to that edge a couple times myself and probably never had the guts to go through with it. I deal with depression. I deal with anxiety. Getting help was really hard to do, but I think I look at someone like Nick who had accomplished so much. He has a beautiful family, just a beautiful life, and yet was in such a dark place that he felt that not being part of that was the better alternative for him and for those around him. And I don't know that that I'll ever make sense of that, Adam. That will never make sense to me. And I don't ever want to see it not make sense for anybody else. You know, he was just this amazing, amazing person who would bend over backwards to help other people and left such a mark, and yet didn't feel like he could reach out and get that same help. And that sucks. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say, I guess, on that. I just miss him. I miss him so damn much. And the blood python world lost someone really, really special when he left. And, you know, I look at when Sean and Kathleen and I went out to help Kendra. And Sean, you want to talk about just an amazing individual. I don't think I would have gotten through that trip without Sean. I remember when we turned off the incubator at CBE for the last time, knowing it was going to be the last clutch that ever came out of it. And just, it felt like turning off life support. I guess in some ways it was. And then when we took the last photos on that trip, and I just kind of collapsed, and just kind of sank down there against one of the racks and was like, how is this even a thing? It was so surreal because, you know, I'm getting to hang out with Sean, who's just this amazing keeper, and spend time with Kendra, who's this absolutely amazing woman. And then Sean's girlfriend, Kathleen, who is, oh my gosh, you want to talk about like the sense of humor that carried us through that. And we were grappling with all of these heavy emotions, and she was just keeping us on track. Like, okay, let's get this done. Let's, you know, next snake, next photo. But the fact that we were having to do this because Nick wasn't there to do it. And, I don't know how you ever really make sense of that, you know? And I think the only way that we do is to just live in such a way that other people feel like they can reach out for help, and that that if they are going through something similar, that they have someone they can reach out to, and that it is okay to reach out for help. It is okay to not be strong enough to do this on your own. And, and I'll just spend the rest of my life wishing that Nick had felt he could reach out and say, I need help. Because my God, the aftermath when someone doesn't feel like that is, it's absolutely unthinkable, and nobody else should have to go through that. And, you know, this last trip, I just got back last week, from photographing all the babies, and Kendra's in a good place. She's an incredibly strong person. Go buy snakes from her, help her lighten the load. You know, the animals there are all in tip top shape. But it's a lot of snakes for a person to deal with. And even though she has help from the zoo, it's a lot. And, just seeing her strength and her resilience, and her being able to navigate this with the grace and the grit that she has really helped me. And then also Matt Garabrandt, who, he's a former keeper. He's taken a hiatus from snakes, but he knew Nick really well. And, I'll actually show this off. I can roll up my sleeve. He did. I'm going to stand up. Hopefully you can see this. It says CBE forever. And it says, hey friend, because that's how Nick always used to answer the phone. And then it's one of the raspberry golden eye blood pythons that we collaborated on. And so I did that on this last trip, and Matt brought that to fruition for me. And so I think just getting to do that in remembrance of Nick, it's not closure. You don't ever, you never gain closure. But acceptance that, you know, the future is going to look different without him in it. And that sucks, but we're still going to get through it. And I think to just live in a way that honors him, and knowing that his snakes are well represented in my collection, in Sean's collection, and in so many other people's collections now. You know, I know Phil has a fantastic golden eye that he picked up from Kendra, and so many keepers have leaned in and picked up snakes that cold-blooded earth will always, always, always be represented in blood pythons until blood pythons are no longer a thing. I think until humanity burns itself out and all of this is just dust, he has left an indelible mark on the hobby. And that's a legacy, you know, and I think remembering the way he lived instead of the way he died is my choice. And I think it should be anybody else's, because he left a hell of a mark. And he was just a great guy. So that's what I have to say about Nick. Forrest Gump, right? That's all I have to say about that. So.
Yeah, it was the picture of him with his daughter is such a heartbreaking image. Absolutely heartbreaking.
And she is just the coolest kid. She looks just like both of her parents. She looks so much like Nick. She looks so much like Kendra. And when I was there week before last, she's really into this show called Danny Go on YouTube. And he's like this animal guy. He's kind of crazy. And so I learned like the flamingo dance, and we were doing like the dinosaur shuffle and just all of this fun stuff with her. And she loves animals. And she's just the coolest kid. And to see that she's such a blend of both of her parents is just really amazing. But at the same time, it's like I look at her and I'm like, how do you choose to not be a part of that? And then to just know that he was in such a desperate place that he didn't feel like he had any other option. That just kind of takes the wind out of your sails. So,
yeah, it's, show me an honest person that, says that they haven't been in a situation where they thought it would be easier to not be here.
Yeah. Just let go of the steering wheel,
Yeah.
Or we have all had those thoughts, but then for those thoughts to become so overpowering that they come to fruition. It's like, I think a lot of us are really lucky to have never been in that spot.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially, just being a father, seeing that picture, it hits in a very different way, and just knowing how important you are to your kids, that you're there for them is, it's just a terrible thing.
Yeah. It's unfathomable. It's such a profound loss. And, I think we just all have to be better. We all have to, and I think that's one of the things that kind of is tough, because Nick and I had hard conversations about mental health. Like, he knew a lot of my struggles and just things that I've dealt with. And we talked about meds. We talked about so much of this, and we have to keep talking about this until people are not afraid to ask for help, till people feel like they can just reach out, and it may be the last desperate thing that they do, but to make that choice to say, I need help with this. I can't do this alone. Like, we have to make the world a place where anyone can feel comfortable saying, I need help. And that takes, go ahead.
Why do you think he wanted to downsize his collection? Did he say why?
There was a lot of stress. He had a lot of animals. There was a lot of stress. I think just where he was too, he was a full-time dad first. And so being with the kiddo all day and then doing snakes all night, it's like, that's a tough balance. Part of me thinks like if he could have just held on until she was in school, maybe things would be different. Cause she's really thriving with that and doing well. But the reptile market is not, the market's really soft right now. I think it's a tough thing to have snakes as a livelihood. I think if you talk to anybody that does this full time, they'll tell you it's a struggle. It's a grind. And there comes a point where I think anybody has to look at quality of life and just say, is this really worth it? Is the juice worth the squeeze, as I like to say? And I just don't think that I think the squeeze was too much. And so
being a dad, being a parent, is extraordinarily hard, especially in the society that we're in, where there is no emphasis on caring for your child. It's the emphasis is always on production and what you can put into the system. And there's not very much support for parents. Having raised two kids, me and my wife worked total opposite schedules. My wife worked 12-hour shifts, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I worked Monday through Thursday, 10-hour shifts at my plant. And it was ships passing in the night to be able to care for our kids and not pay somebody else to do it, which then kind of negates an entire salary.
Right.
And it's this horrible predicament where there's not very much emphasis put on being a family or a parent. And I really wish that was more of a thing, where it was easier to be a parent, and it was easier. I wish it was easier to raise your kids. And I wish that was viewed more as an investment, in the future, is, giving really good quality care to your kids by just being there for them, and it is hard having kids that are not in school. It's really hard having kids that are not in school.
It really is. I especially kind of to that point that you made about culture being about productivity. Brene Brown, who is an author that I love, one of the things that she talks about is that, letting go of exhaustion as a status symbol and productivity as self-worth is one of the things that she explores. And it's like, yeah, we have to stop this glorification of busy. And then, and you compound it with, especially as a parent, and I'm a step parent, that's hard, and so I think you look at parents who are constantly being judged by other parents. And that's one of these things too, that social media has brought about, is we live in this constant state of comparison. And there's always someone who is not living your life telling you that you're doing a crap job. And that's bullshit. I'm sorry. That is just bullshit. And, we have to stop weighing and measuring ourselves or our self-worth by what this fake, shallow internet tells us we should be or could be, because there's always someone out there that is going to think that they're doing it better, or who has an opinion. And if we're spending our time fussing over that, then we're not spending the time with the people who need us and who love us. And so it's like, that's where that sense of community that you and I were talking about earlier, we have to engage. We have to start with our families. We have to start with our communities. We have to engage, build that connection, and build our solid baseline so that we have that solid baseline to return to when things get stressful, when things get tough. We're not out clamoring for live action likes on the internet. We're returning to the people who we hold dear and who love us and who we have fostered that sense of community and that sense of care. And we can log off and just be with them and be present and not really worry about what the great big world has to say, because we're living our lives with the people that we love. And we have to get back to that. And, and that's hard when we do live in a society that is always telling us to produce more and to want more and to strive for more and to compare more. In a lot of ways, social media has been one of the worst things to happen to this species. It brings people closer and it alienates them at the same time. And if you really want to get into it, there's a book I love called Stolen Focus by Johann Hari. And he gets into how our attention spans have been shortened because we've been hooked into these predatory algorithms that are capitalizing on keeping us pissed off and angry at each other. It's an excellent book. Listen to it on Audible. It's narrated by the author. It's 100% worth it. But it's talking about how our attention spans are gone and how our sense of community is gone and how our ability to get into these creative flow states are gone because social media preys upon people. And how it's designed to do that. And it wrecks families, it wrecks relationships, because we're losing that ability to communicate, to work through conflict, to be present, to be fully present in each other's lives. And the crazy thing is that we have the power to just log off and to do the exact opposite. And we have to do it.
Yeah. And I sometimes, it makes you wonder, we make ourselves so busy and it's like, well, what are we hiding from?
What are we avoiding? Totally.
Yeah. I make myself extraordinarily busy and I like being busy. And, I was supposed to have, Ty Park on last weekend and he canceled and I took the day off, I took the whole weekend off and, like all my Fitbit metrics went up, like sometimes it's good to just, it's good to just be off, and like, oh, well, I got all the animals squared away on Friday and, I'm going to go through and do little spot checks and, but that also too, like having a small collection of animals that you can actually enjoy is awesome. Being able to sit down with an animal and appreciate it instead of just being like, I need to keep hammering and keep pushing through. Yeah. And it's a constant grind, which sometimes it feels like it is.
Keeping 10 more of the same species doesn't make you a better keeper, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, but we have this, there's this comparative thing that social media has created. And to your point about being busy, if we would just deal with the stuff, if we would own our stuff and deal with it. And I'm a world-class busybody. But the more time that we spend, whether it's trauma or anything else that we're avoiding, if we spend our time doing that deep work, we no longer feel that pressure to stay busy, and we can be so intentional with our time and what we want it to look like and what we want it to be. And it takes courage. It takes a lot of courage to do the work. But it's so worth it. It's so worthwhile. And getting to a point where we no longer have to chase being busy.
Yeah.
And to reprioritize. So.
Yeah, I mean, like if I get a building, I keep trying to tell myself, like, you probably shouldn't add any more animals. You should probably focus on just larger enclosures, better keeping, a better workflow where it's easier, more efficient to get through, things like that. Instead of just, like I just recently had Rob Stone on, and he said, keep less better.
Yes. Yes. Rob's a great guy.
He is.
Rob's awesome.
And I think that, but there is a glorification of, these enormous rack systems and, snakes upon snakes upon snakes. And it's sort of a status symbol, especially when you see these really big breeders that have this really impressive collection, and people kind of want to emulate that.
Gosh.
How many? Yeah, it's a
trap. Don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, how many people say, like, I want to, I really looked up to Brian Barczyk, and I want to have what he had, and he had so many animals,
because they're only seeing the highlight reels. Like people would come to Nerd and oh my gosh, I want to have what Kevin has. No, you don't. You don't want a $35,000 a month mortgage on a building. You don't want employees that steal your snakes and you have to set up undercover cops to buy them back and deal with that. You don't want to have employees throw away one-of-a-kind snakes that you then have them digging through the dumpster to find because they were not paying attention and just dumped the whole tub in the trash.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, people just you see the highlight reels. You see the fun stuff. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of cool stuff about big facilities and being exposed to all those animals and being able to work with so many species. But there's a trade-off to everything. There's a trade-off to everything. And people don't see the giant retic that gets out of an enclosure and crawls through the fish room and busts open the fish system and dumps 5,000 gallons of water on the floor and then fries a pump and kills half the fish. And what that costs to replace and to fix and all the stress and yeah, it's really easy to want that little slice of it, but life, 98% of the time, is not all sunshine and tacos, my friend. It is busted fish systems and regurgitated rats and thieving employees and lots of drama. And that's the part that is so easy to forget when you're looking at the 2% of the time that everything is sunshine and tacos and pretty ball pythons. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
How do you think as a community, as the reptile community, how do you think that we try to change the course of the ship more towards the quality of keeping and not and maybe taking the emphasis off of breeding? Like, does everybody have to breed? Do you always have to breed? Is there a race to breed? Like, and maybe it's really rewarding and maybe you do want to breed, but it's not like how do we change that perception? How do we look at people that keep their animals really well the same way that we look at the people that breed their animals really well and on a high level?
I think that's where, in a lot of ways, responsible preservation dog breeders have it dialed in. But they have, and here's the thing, they have the luxury to spay and neuter. Until we get to a point where not every reptile can be bred, it's going to come down to having these conversations about, keep, like Rob said, keep less better. And that has to be prioritized. I don't think we can legislate it into being, just because I think the nature of American culture, much less American herpetoculture, is that people are always going to want to do their own thing and buck the system because yay, freedom. But I think when we look at Why? First of all, we have to be willing to have tough conversations. And in order to have tough conversations, we need to be able to establish relationships. And to be able to establish relationships, we have to be okay with being wrong and being vulnerable and putting ourselves out there and saying, hey, you know what? I really value only keeping this many snakes, and I keep them in this size enclosure, and I enjoy them because I'm fascinated by what these animals do, not because I need to find my validation in them or because I need them to be a status symbol or because I need them to, supplement my income or whatever. And then I think when that becomes more the norm, because we're able to have those tough conversations and say, who is it really serving to have thousands of ball pythons or to make all of these clutches and then just turn around and wholesale them out? Like, what value is that? What benefit? What do we do better by doing that? And if we're constantly willing to strive to be better, to do better, I mean, I have entire seasons, I don't pair up a single snake, and it's like, no, I can sit this one out. I'm good. But that has to become the norm, I think. And until we can agree to disagree or agree to have tough conversations that don't end in name calling and blocking people, like, we have to get back to the business of being human before we can be better keepers for our animals. And that's going to be a big, I think, just a big hurdle and a big obstacle to overcome because, the internet has set up so many echo chambers where people can easily go find people to agree with them, and they support that confirmation bias and just only hearing the same thing over and over and over again. And anyone who doesn't disagree with me is the enemy and I'm going to block them. I mean, that's a horrible mindset. And it certainly doesn't teach us to grow. It doesn't teach us to consider new things and to say, why should I do this better? Or why should I do this differently? It's a real conundrum. I don't think there's an easy solve for it, Adam, without legislating it into being. And that's a slippery slope because that's how animal rights come in and strip away every freedom that we have. But I think it has to start with culture. It has to start with community. It has to start with maybe being willing to open up a collection or having these weekends like a carpet fest or a colubrid fest where people can come see other people's animals and see how they're doing things and go, maybe I want to try that, or maybe I'm going to get more enjoyment out of that. And having brave conversations about it. I don't know. I don't have an answer on that. But we have to stop the glorification of busy. We have to stop the glorification of stacking snakes to the ceiling. I remember the first time I went out to Prehistoric Pets, and Jay literally had cages of retics to the ceiling, and his guys were having to stand on these big ladders. And I'm just like, what is this? Like,
That's
why?
crazy.
Yeah. And retics, I mean, I have nerve damage from a retic bite in 2008 where this whole interior surface of my thumb, I can't feel it at all from that big retic that bit me. And it's like, and I know I'm tangenting here. I apologize. I know I'm rambling, but it's like, why are we making so many more of these highly specialized snakes that not everyone needs to keep? But
so specialized.
And I got like the tiniest little bite that I could have gotten from that snake, and she messed me up. And, and it's like, why are we doing that? What validation is it that we're seeking by keeping these animals in the first place, rather than just enjoying the animals for what they are? And I think until that shifts, and that's a whole different conversation, we're going to have a tough time even broaching keeping less better.
Yeah, I know Keith McPeak recently had a post that he put up, and he was talking about Keith. He's such a great guy.
He's such a great guy.
Pleasure of meeting him at Daytona, and such a nice guy. And he was talking about how he was like, back, in the day, it was, you were focused on keeping the animal, keeping them alive, and giving them the best care possible, and he kind of talked about that whole subject. And I screenshotted it because so much of what we see on social media is it's footprints in the snow. It just, it goes up. Some people appreciate it. They like it. They'll comment, and then it's gone, So it's like sometimes when something that really, hits you and you think like, hey, maybe I'm doing it right. Maybe that I'm taking a very slow approach to this, and I'm not in a hurry to pair snakes up. Maybe, I can go back and look at this screenshot and reassure myself that I don't need to pressure my animals into reproducing as soon as possible.
Oh man. Yeah. It makes me think, back to the days of buying those first, my ramen noodle Surinames, as I called them, because I literally ate ramen noodles. I mean, it was like the first, and this was 1998, 99. And for me back then, spending $1,000 on a pair of boas was a big deal. I was not making mad money. Still not making mad money, but you went to someone who specialized in them. You went to someone who was a specialist and who had really good quality and knew everything about those snakes and knew everything about the snakes ahead of them and ahead of them and ahead of them. And I think if we get back to that, and I'm seeing a definite shift in more of a niche herpetoculture where people are specializing and they are getting really good at what they keep, and they're keeping them in better enclosures, and they're only producing a few small clutches. Like, I think that is a potential outcome. There are always going to be mass producers. There are always going to be importers. There are always going to be those with kind of the low rent mentality that want the cheapest snake they can. Like, I had a guy reach out to me on Instagram a couple of weeks ago and was like, ball python breeder here. And I'm like, that's not the flex you think it is, buddy. He was like, I want to get a blood python to make super balls. What do you have for $200? And I'm like, I'm not the breeder you're looking for. I got nothing. Pound sand. I didn't tell him to pound sand, but I certainly thought it. But it's just if you're price shopping for a snake, I'm the last person you need to talk to, not because I want people to come to me and spend a bunch of money, but because that tells me that you're not going to give that animal the quality of care that I want my animals to have.
Yeah.
If someone comes and says, here's my budget, I need to stay within this. Is this realistic? And I have plenty of people who do that. They say, I can only spend X on a snake. Do you have anything in that range? I'll be like, I'll work with you. I'll make a snake in that range for you. I'll come off a price because I know you're going to take great care of it. But I think until we get to that point where it's not people just cranking out snakes to sell, and we support those keepers who are doing the niche specialization, making these mind-blowingly awesome animals, and you're on a waiting list for 2 years instead of this Amazon Prime instant gratification, I can click on it and it's here the next day mentality. Until we start demanding better, why would anyone need to fulfill better?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. I need to put together an idiot fest at some point.
Heck yeah. I would come to an idiot fest. I'll be your village idiot. I would.
All right.
Yes.
We got Kara Norris on board.
Yes. Your token idiot. So like I said, any idiot can breed blood pythons. Keep them alive long-term and then we'll talk.
Yeah. How old is your oldest blood python?
I just lost one of my oldest ones, and that one really stung. And she was 18, and that really stung. But in that range, 18, 19, around there.
Wow.
Yeah. When we had that issue a few years ago, and lost a chunk of them, that took out some of our old snakes, and that was really painful.
What happened?
The room overheated. So I'm not going to get into the.
Yeah.
But we had a system failure, and it was rough. So.
That's terrible.
Yeah, that was probably the darkest moment. Second darkest now, for obvious reasons. But yeah, that was tough, and lost a lot of really great animals in that time. So. Yeah.
I'm hoping that Vin gets back on the horse.
I ugly cried.
It's terrible
when I saw that. I ugly cried. Vin, man, you want to talk about? And I have some incredibly fond memories of Vin at the White Plains shows and at Tinley, and just interacting with him over the years. You want to talk about a man who is just a wealth of knowledge, and again, quality, right? Like pick a lane and go as far as you can in that lane to a high degree of quality. And that's just who Vin Russo is to his core. I really hope he's able to make a comeback. And that's where that sense of community is so important, because you put animals into guardian homes, and you have those bloodlines preserved somewhere with someone you can trust. But that's also, it's a big responsibility that you ask people to take on by taking
Yeah.
on animals and feeding them and caring for them. And it's, dog breeders have that down pat, where they find guardian homes that raise up a stud dog or a really nice female and do all the health testing and titling. I wish we had a way to spay and neuter reptiles, because we could do the same thing and really just change the landscape for something way better. So, because goodness knows we're not trusting people to be responsible with them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, with Vin, I mean, he literally wrote the book on boas. What a fantastic book it is, too.
And just what an incredible person he is. So,
yeah.
Yep.
Well, I wanted to get to feeding. Do you have a few minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. Feeding? Absolutely.
Yeah. We got a little heavy there.
I know.
Kara.
Apologize. I am not afraid of talking about tough stuff.
You made me cry on episode 100.
You made me get choked up too. I mean, hey, it's I'm right there with you. But that is something, we all need people that we can sit through the tough stuff with. And it's funny. I'm going to tangent for a second before we talk about feeding. I am this year I got my certification as a Clifton Strengths coach. Because I do a lot of coaching, and it's a coaching platform that I really love. And my number one talent is restorative. I have to get in and fix things. That's just, I'm naturally wired to fix things. And that means I'm going to sit with people and help them fix things. So all that to say, don't mind getting heavy. But thank you for being willing to navigate that with me. As far as feeding goes,
thank you.
What would you like to know?
So how are you feeding? How do you recommend people feed animals from, like what are your what are the stages? Is it from 0 to 1 year, 2 year to 3 year, 3 year to 5 year? Like how do you go through that, and what's the frequency of feeding for longevity and health and all the above?
I'm going to sound incredibly glib when I say this. It's not meant to be as trite and pithy as it sounds, but feed the snake in front of you. Look at what that snake needs and feed it. Do you know what a healthy body condition on a blood python is supposed to look like? Yes or no? Does that snake match that condition? Yes or no? Adjust accordingly. So to do that, I mean, you can achieve it a bunch of different ways. You can I like to feed babies every week, when they're young. I think that's a consistent way to start them off and just get them established. In that first 3 years of life with pythons, that's when you're going to see the most growth, typically, especially with blood pythons. If you want to feed strategically and get them up to a certain size within that first 3 years, that's your best opportunity to do it. Otherwise, you're looking at slow growth over a longer period of time. I think if we want to break this down into a formula, for the first year, feed them an appropriately sized meal every week. Given the girth of a blood python and how chunky they are, with babies, I like to feed them something that'll leave a slight bulge. They don't need to look like they swallowed a football, but it should be slightly perceptible. You don't want to leave something, you don't want to feed them something so small that it's like, what are we doing here? Because they're just going to turn it into growth. So I want to see a slight bulge that is gone within a day or two. And that's for about the first year. A year to 2 years, back them off to every couple of weeks. If you're wanting to feed on a longer trajectory for growth, I like to feed my females, especially cyclically. So there are times a year where they may fast, and then there are times a year that maybe they're getting fed twice a week. Right. In prep for breeding season. Blood pythons are incredibly, incredibly fuel efficient. They have slow metabolisms. It's easy to make them obese. But within that first 3 years, I think it's tough, because they're just going to turn into growth. And that's where, as a keeper, you can really learn to judge your snake's body condition. Are they getting long and stringy and lanky? Feed them more, or feed them bigger meals. If they're getting chunky and they start to lose their necks, feed them less. I think a big thing is, with bloods, people tend to overfeed them and then cram them into small cages. And that's where you hear of blood pythons being constipated or impacted. And it's like, no. They will hit periods in life where they will defecate much less frequently. But I tell you what, baby blood pythons in the first 6 months are some of the messiest, most poopingest snakes you will ever keep. They are filthy little hobbits. And you're constantly cleaning because they're constantly defecating. And so there are a lot of ways to do this right. And I think a lot of ways to do this wrong. And you just have to really dial it into what is there in front of you. I know a lot of people like to only feed once a month. And I think if you're feeding a large enough meal, that works great. I have some snakes that would probably stress themselves out if I did that, and they want to eat, every couple of weeks or every week, but smaller meals. And I think you just have to fine tune it to the snake. There's no one size fits all. There are guidelines, but I guarantee you, the snakes aren't reading those guidelines. And so we as keepers have to read the snakes and adjust. And I think this is one of the stages where the internet can be a double-edged sword, because people reach out for help and people are like, don't feed them any more than once a month, or don't feed them any more than once every 2 or 3 weeks. And then you have a keeper that goes back and they apply that as gospel, thinking that they can't think outside of those rigid parameters. And then you have a snake that's all stressed out because it's not eating as frequently as it may need to or want to. Yeah. So, yeah.
So the frequency of their bowel movements, do you think that is from being confined to too small of a space, not having room to move around?
I absolutely think it can. I think dehydration plays a big part in it too. Blood pythons are incredibly picky about water. They want fresh water, like, every other day. I think doing frequent water changes with them is necessary. And I think if a blood python is not sufficiently hydrated, it can really have a negative effect on bowel movements, on overall health. You'll see it in their skin, especially. Hydration is way more important than humidity in a lot of things, just like it is for us, right? Like if we get dehydrated, our mental function starts to decline, our skin looks like crap, overall we just feel sluggish and less effective. And I think it's the same way for snakes. Bloods want fresh water frequently, and we have to make sure we provide that to them, or else it's going to show up and manifest in different ways. So,
how often do you recommend water changes?
I like every other day.
Holy cow, that's so much, Kara.
It is.
Wow, I need to up my game.
Up your game. And I mean, don't get me wrong. There are times that I'll go, like if I'm out of town, yeah, snakes they're not having waters changed every day. Is that the end of the world? No, but it shouldn't be a habit. It should be the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they really want fresh water. And that
I can't believe how much they drink. It's
they drink
crazy.
So much. They drink and they pee a lot. That's really their only drawback. But they want fresh water, and you'll be surprised at how quickly a blood python will turn its nose up at water if it's stale. And their perception of stale is way different than our perception of stale.
Yeah.
So I think that's important to keep in mind.
Yeah. All right. Well, so is there anything else you'd like to add? Anything?
Oh man.
Or do you think we covered it?
I mean, we covered a lot of great stuff. I appreciate the opportunity to come in here and ramble about, some of my favorite species. I will say if you're considering a blood python, give them a chance. They are amazing snakes. They are so misunderstood, like you said. But they are also a species where work with a keeper who has a track record and experience. There are a lot of people jumping into them who have bred them successfully, but can't help you troubleshoot long-term problems. And I think this is not just true for bloods. This is true for any species. Look for a breeder who has experience. Like if you're really hungry for knowledge and you're looking to learn, cultivate those relationships, right? Build that community, cultivate relationships. Don't be afraid to not have all the knowledge. No single person knows everything there is to know about any of these animals that we keep. I learn new stuff all the time. I ask questions all the time. And we all have to be willing to say, I don't know, and I'm going to ask. And I'm not going to judge someone for doing the same thing. I'm not going to judge someone for not having all the answers. And that's the kind of community in herpetoculture that we all need to cultivate. And we need to be willing to say, I don't have all the answers, and seek out people who are more experienced, honor that experience, and learn from them, and then pay that forward. And that's such an essential thing that I feel like, you get on the internet and people are jockeying for ego and jockeying for validation. And it's like, man, just be cool. None of us know all this. Help lift others up. At the end of the day, what did we give back more than what we took? I know Jane Goodall passed away recently, and she's a woman I've deeply admired for many years. And there's a quote it's actually in my email signature at work and has been for quite some time. And it's made it kind of its resurgence around the internet with her recent passing. But it is, you cannot get through a single day without making an impact on the world around you. What you do makes a difference. And you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. And that is true for every single person. The minute you get up in the morning, you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. We get this tiny little time on this earth. And it's a vapor in the wind, and it is over in a moment. And if we are not intentional about it, if we're just doom scrolling and not being intentional with our time, not being intentional with our animals, not being intentional with our relationships, we're pissing it away. And so I challenge every single person who listens to this, wake up every day and decide what kind of difference you want to make, and then go live into that value of making a difference. Because nothing changes otherwise. Nothing gets better otherwise. And I think we have to be crazy enough and brave enough to say, no, I'm going to do something different. So.
Hell yeah, Kara.
Woo! And,
thank you. I really appreciate you coming
absolutely. On. And if you're not sure, come call me and I'll talk you into believing you can do anything. So, but thank you for doing this, and thank you for letting me be episode 100. I know I owed you an episode for a long time. So, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about Nick. He was an amazing person. And, like I said, CBE forever is the hashtag. Go onto my website. There are a lot of mental health resources there. And if you ever need any, or call me, I'll talk to you.
Hell yeah. Thank you, Kara.
No, thank you, Adam. Appreciate it.